Hey guys, in today's episode we welcome back Jason Ryder to the Carp Chronicles podcast. Jason has just returned from a mammoth trip from France in which he caught an obscene number of big fish, many over the 60-pound mark, including one very, very special fish that has eluded him for a number of years. He takes us through the details of his trip, and of course the conversation takes us down many tangents and rabbit holes, many of these about bait as per usual. We also discuss the upcoming release of his new book, which sounds a little bit to me like a bait enthusiast Bible. Then we finish off with some of the questions that you guys kindly messaged in. Now then, before we get into the meat of this episode, we need to give a shout out to the guys at carphuntergiveaways.co.uk for sponsoring this podcast. Carphuntergiveaways.co.uk run competitions daily where you can buy tickets for as little as 99p to be entered into draws to win some serious fishing tackle. Items include things like bait, bivvies, bite alarms, luggage, bed chest. The list is endless. They also give back to Phoenix Heroes, who are a charity who support veterans and their families who suffer from PTSD, something that Sam and I are also particularly passionate about. Now finally, our range of hook baits, which I know you've all heard about so much, are available for you to buy at baitbros.co.uk. We've got 4 different sets of baits in the range, and you can pick up all 4 sets of baits for around £30. So head over to baitbros.co.uk and get these baits before they're gone. Now then, I hope you enjoy the episode and we'll catch you soon.
It was sort of outrageous, really. Shall I open this beer? Because I've got one ready to go. Because we normally do that, don't we? So I've got a little stash of Guinness Extra Cold here, and
Nice.
it was really cold, but since we've been messing around with the computer a bit, it's a little bit warmer, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, go for it. I think Sam's had the afternoon in a beer garden, so I think Sam's already halfway there.
I've been on the go since about 12:30, so yeah, I've had a few in me, to be honest with you. But
So yeah, the trip was pretty incredible, and I think it sort of pissed people off from the point of view where they sort of weren't going fishing or couldn't go fishing, and I actually got a few sort of negative comments about it, more on the owners' forums and things. What the hell are you doing going to France fishing and stuff? I mean, I had to go to look at my own property, to maintain it, to work out what needed doing, and to physically work. But with the implications of the crossing and having to do the test and everything, it just made more sense to go for 3 weeks. And then, of course, it brings in the equation of no one's going. You can offer someone a bit of, dinner money to go and fish some top lakes that have got 3 or 4 year waiting lists, which was what we did the first week with moolah knots.
I think you might have muted yourself, Jason.
Unmuted.
Yeah, I love this technology, eh?
Yeah. So I mean, there was one thing I really wanted to go over about the sort of first podcast for the flavors. I mean, you've got me into these now, so I mean, while I was away, I pretty much listened to all of them sort of in my tent, and it's pretty cool. So I was listening to the John Baker one, and he answered the same question you asked me completely differently, and that was, would you use a flavor that was 20 years old? And I said yes. Now I'll tell you why I said yes. Obviously, John makes the point where everything has a sell-by date, has to be fresh, and we touched on the point that some of the flavor compounds are actually nutritional ingredients. We went over the Q enzymes, the caprylics, caprylics, and all of that, obviously, which aren't going to be nutritional after 20 years. But people, I think 95, maybe 99% of people are using flavors incorrectly. They're not using them as flavors, they're using them as aromas. So my answer was that if you pick up a bottle of flavor and you sniff it and it smells like the smell you want to create in the bait, then use it. But you've got to say they are, at the end of the day, still flavors. And if you put it into your bait, you're flavoring your bait with it, right? Yeah. And I think people aren't necessarily considering it. All they're going for is the smell. So to put that again in one of my famous human analogies, I mean, if I'm say I've been to football and it's the evening, I'm going back to my car and I walk past the tandoori, I can smell it cooking, yeah, or someone's having a barbecue in their garden, straight away that's in my brain. I want it. I've selected my next food item by smell. Okay, but what percent of my diet is selected by smell? I'm going to say it's less than 5%. So how much of it is selected by sight? Well, if I see a really nice packaging or a cream donut or something, I might have that. But probably 90% of my food is selected on taste. I know what tastes good. I go back for the same sort of thing. I make those selections. Now, carp's not a person. And I think the equation, probably the sight equation, is a lot higher. I think they do select a lot of their meals by sight. But what if the most important thing is taste? I'm talking in carp terms, I'm talking gustation rather than olfaction, yeah? Mm-hmm. I'm thinking probably 95% of anglers are thinking that olfaction is the most important bit in making a carp bait. But what if 95% of the importance is actually from gustation? Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, I think gustation's become more relevant. I think as I've got older and I've sort of created baits in the later years, yeah, I think gustation's become more important for me, because I agree with you. You want the fish to enjoy eating it, don't you? When they're consuming the bait, I guess, and it's all pluming out through the gill rakers, it's going up into the water column, and any fish in that locality as well, they can taste it through the water as such. Because I think a lot of people think with gustation, it's almost like us, don't they? They think it's sort of the fish taste it through their mouth. Would you say that right? Which is obviously a misconception.
Yeah, I mean, so straight away from that, you've got different types of fishing. So you've got your day ticket bait. Let's say you've got I don't know, one of the linear lakes, I don't know, say it's 20 acres, and say you've got 30 anglers around it, and they're all turning up and they're all chucking in boilies. Now, how can a carp particularly tell the difference between one boiler and not over a short space of time? And the answer is they probably can't. So most of my fishing is session fishing. And I think, as Bill said in his article, over the course of 7 days, you definitely 100% can influence the way fish feed with your bait, especially if you're the only person on the water and you're not in competition with anyone else. I mean, I hate these cord de goo things. You know, I mean, I was shown it a long time ago by the South Africans, and I thought, yeah, I just don't like the whole concept of it. And they're flavoured to death. But is that, again, is it more of a sight thing? It's getting you the bite because you get that little plume. Does it hide your hook? Is it along those lines? I just think people need, when in terms of bait making, people need to consider everything they're putting in their bait. You know, and another thing that I totally agreed with was, I'm not sure whether it was on one of the podcasts or a conversation with someone I had the other day about dips. You know, people are always saying to me, what can I use to boost the bait? And I'm going, please don't use anything. You know, I spent ages designing it and setting it up to work the way it is. And now you want to drown it in salmon oil. So it's just going to taste and smell of salmon oil, you know? But they like putting it on because it gives them confidence because they had a result when they did it. So you have to look at it from that point of view as well. But I certainly think taste is a massive thing, and it's greatly underrated, and people should consider that when they're putting in high level. So again, are we talking about high attract pop-ups, you know, with high levels, or are we actually talking about feed baits? I mean, it depends, I suppose.
Yeah, Sam, I know you can sort of, well, you have done in the past on a podcast, spoken a lot about gustation and olfaction. Is there anything you could sort of add to that? Your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I suppose it's the whole argument about old flavors versus new flavors, and I get what you're saying, Jason, about it's putting that label on it. Like, smells the same, right? But obviously you also touched upon, different components of it. Obviously they have denatured over time. So I think if you're looking, it depends what school of thought you're in, doesn't it? If you're looking at a flavor as attractive to carp in its own right, whether that's through gustatory response or anything else, if different compounds in that flavor have been compromised and faded out, surely that is going to affect the effectiveness of the flavor. And I suppose you could argue, actually, maybe it's going to be more attractive because certain things fade and other things maybe don't fade. And who knows, maybe it goes the other way. But I think you've got to say, if the different components of a flavor are attractive to carp, that must change either to the good or the bad as those different components age and denature.
Yeah, 100% agree. But if it still smells the same, it's a pop-up is still going to be the same. I consider a pop-up to be an artificial bait, first and foremost.
Yeah.
I'm not dissimilar to plastic. I'll give you another example as well. I mean, I'll commonly get a website query, or someone will ring me up and they'll say, I've got this scenario, I'm fishing an old estate lake, it's got 40 carp in, it's seen everything before, what one of your baits would you recommend? And you think, how would I know? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the water temperature? What's it seen before? What's the angling pressure like? There's a million questions you could ask, but you could also be asking better questions about your own bait. So you can look at what the bait's going to be doing for you for 12 hours, So simple, chuck it in a glass of warm water and watch what comes out, what smells out. At the end of that 12 hours, have a look at it, have a feel of it, see what it smells of, chuck it back in the water. 12 hours time again, have another look. I mean, if you want to be really anal about it, take that glass to the lake, scoop the lake bottom out in the water, let it settle, for 24 hours, bring it home and you've recreated the lake bottom. Chuck your baits on that and have a look. So I always like an oil soluble and I mean, you talked about the EOs and you like those. I try and have an oil soluble and an alcohol water soluble attractor in there as well, for the same reason that you get a different response over time. I mean, if you've purely got an alcohol bait and it's an open textured bait and it's coming out of the water quickly in very warm temperatures, I mean, if the bait's not particularly nutritious or has any taste to itself, you've got like a bit of pasta or something after 24, 48 hours. There's nothing there. Now, if you've got an oil flavor in there, that's still going to be. I'll give you an example of this, right? So we were cracking on about the Ultra Spice last time, weren't we? And it sort of got me thinking about, liberating a bit of my stash and rolling something up. I've got a company that have been making me, they're called meat glazes, but they're basically just flavored salts for about 20 years, and they customize them to what I want. So I've got a really nice piri one, which sort of smelled a bit like the old Robin Red, tasted a bit like it as well, tasted very salty. So I put that with the Ultra Spice, and the onion granules, because that was something else we talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said to the lads, can you roll me up 50 kilo of this for my next trip? So they knocked it up and I went to pick it up. And but what I hadn't told them was to take out the alcohol flavors, the plum and the green zinc from my normal bait. And they sort of cancelled each other out and I instantly didn't like it. I went, oh God, I'm not happy with this, but what are you going to do? Do you know what I mean? I'm not going to sell it, so I'm going to use it. Anyway, that bait, I ended up having nine fish over 50 pound on my last trip on. And it's a prime example of that. So after 12 hours or overnight or whatever you like, reel it in the next day, it was a completely different bait. The fruitiness had left it and you could smell the lovely spicy richness, and then break it open and smell the onions in it. And I mean, my friend ended up calling it plumians, but straight away, it's not right for me. I've already worked out the Mark II of that bait. It's not good enough that it's caught me. It's caught me a 60 and a 50 on one lake, and then I've moved to another lake, and I've had 7 50s in 72 hours. that's not good enough. You know what I mean? I want it to be right as well as get the results. You know, if that makes any sort of sense at all.
So this is sort of you've come. This is new to you, isn't it? So obviously this bait, it's come around by mistake.
It's an old bait that I've been doing for 10 years called
Yeah.
plum zing. I mean, I made especially developed a plum to sit directly on top of the Jeff Kemp Green Zing, and it's an effective bait in its own right. I mean, the fact that I've stopped doing it, people have asked for it back, and I've started doing it, and I've been doing it for 10 years. It's also got lots of organic acids in. So it's a bait with a pedigree and a history of catching a lot of fish, but I only wanted to use the base mix. I didn't want the liquids in it, but I didn't convey that well enough. You know what I mean? I sort of probably started telling them and tailed off and went into something else halfway through it, like you do. But I picked it up like a dozen times and I just didn't like it. I had no choice. The first week of our session was so good that you just keep throwing the bait in. And unusual for me, I've been using pretty much the same bait for the last year because I've just done so well on it. Normally I say to any of my customers, I'll use whatever's left over or whatever I've got most of, and it's as simple as that. And one rod might have something I'm mucking around with, but I've tended to stay with the same bait. But I can't I didn't say it, departmentalize. So my car, in different areas of my car, I had different stashes of bait on the basis that they might get taken away, right? So everyone's fearful that their bait's going to get robbed off them. So I had no intention of trying to smuggle it because I think that's where you're going to get a heavy fine if they do. I mean, so to touch briefly on this, I mean, it's put the fear into everybody. I mean, so I work for the Home Office. I know quite a few people in Border Force, and at the moment, it's not really flagged up as an issue. No one really wants loads of bait. No one wants to destroy loads of bait. No one wants to hold loads of. But on the other hand, if they can put heavy fines onto a lot of people and create a lot of revenue, then that's something that could well happen. But obviously, I was going for 3 weeks and I had quite a lot of bait. So, the front had some. The middle of the car had some, the back had some, and I had to use this bait sooner than I wanted as it happened. So shall I basically tell you the story of the trip, because we're just sort of about there, aren't we?
I think so, mate. Do you know what? I've got we need to go into it, definitely. I'll tell you what, you tell us the story of the trip, and then I've got a couple of questions just on sort of what you've said, but I think if you sort of like lay it out, then that sounds perfect.
Well, so the first night I'm through anyway. No big deal, nothing untoward, nothing any different from normal. Driving through France, and it's absolutely chucking it down. So I'm heading off to my own lake, basically to have a look if any of the pipes or the shower or any of that need replacing, because my friend Ian's coming over in 2 days. So if there is, I can call him, and it's going to be easier to get him from England than it is from France. So as it turns out, they all need replacing. But the rain's really hammering down, and I'm thinking I've got to go there for a night, set up a brolly, get absolutely soaked. Even if I don't fish, it's just going to be miserable sitting there. So I'm thinking this is just stupid. So I pull off into the services, and I'm thinking so after one day I'm heading off to Étaing's Moulinots in the Champagne region. So I'm ringing them on the phone, basically to say, can I come a day early? Because it makes no sense just to get soaked for a night. Anyway, they didn't answer the phone. So I think, do you know what? I need to go to the blooming lake. I don't want to go to the lake, but I'm going to go there. If nothing else, right, we're coming back to fish in 7 days' time. I'll throw in 25 kilos all over the bait, and the fishing will be good. But because I've got to do some work then anyway. So I get there, and it's absolutely just bouncing off the ground, and I think I'm not getting out of the car till it stops. So I sat there for an hour, and it stopped. Everything's soaking. Got out. All the grass is really long. No one's been there to cut it or anything. It's all overgrown, but the lake looks lovely. You know what I mean? There's fish rolling and jumping and stuff, and You know, the water level's really high, everything's green, looks really nice. So I think I've been in, I've checked the shower, I've checked the mower, all the tools, everything that needs doing. The boat's sunk at the other end, so that's got to be retrieved and bailed out. And I think I'll stick 3 rods out. You know, I'm here for 12 hours. You know, let's catch my first carp of the year. I'm quite keen. So anyway, by the time I get the second rod out, the first one's away, and it's like an 8-pound tench. Then I'm putting the first one back out, the second rod's away, and it's one of the stockies. It's like a 15, 16 pound. Then I think I get a bloody bream or something, but they're all big, but like 14, 15 pound. I don't mind catching them. I've seen them in my lake to 25 pound, and I really, really want to catch one of those. Anyway, so I've had about 6 or 7 takes in 2 hours, and they're tench, bream, grass carp, stockies, nothing particularly worth catching. But it's a bit of action, and I've not fished for 6 months, so it's all welcome. So I got the rods out and powers off, 25 pound common, land that. I'm thinking, this is crazy. You know what I mean? Literally, as soon as I chuck one out, it's away. It's not normally like this. So anyway, I've got 2 rods in, then one of them flies off. That's like another tench. I weigh it because I thought it was a double. It was 9.15. So that's it. I got 1 rod out, and I think I dragged it anyway in landing the 25 pounder, and it's in the middle. It's in a spot that I never really catch them. So I think that's it. Right, I'm right under me brolly. I'm as dry as I can be. It's pouring my rain again. You know, I just get my head down. So anyway, then my alarm's going, and I've got no idea what time it is at all. As it happens, it was about 2 hours late. It was like bang on midnight, but absolutely pitch black. There's no light pollution at all there. You know, it's absolutely black. Fish fought really hard. Knew it was one of the originals, and I'm just thinking in my head, because it's one of the originals, I'm going to want a photo. Where's all my lights? Where's my bank sticks? Where's my tripod? Where's all that? You know, so all I'm thinking. Anyway, really hard fight. Fish go. I can see a light coloured flank. Fish goes in the net. Put the net on the night station, and I go and fumble around for 5 minutes looking for my phone, and I put that on. That's midnight. Put my waders on. You know, I'm getting sorted out. Now, 5 or 6 years I've had my lake, I've been desperate to catch this one fish, right? I call it the Jurassic. When I bought the lake originally, there was a picture of a pike, which is about 15 pound, and this really apple sliced mirror of probably about 15 pound, but an adult carp lying on the ground, presumably dead. And I met it was black and white. I remember looking over and seeing 1971 written on it. And she was like, yeah, this, and telling me this. I said, are there carp in the lake? And she said, no, we've never put carp in, but maybe some. Every year we put pike in, you know, and we catch the pike and we eat them and all that sort of malarkey. So I've always wanted to catch this fish, knowing that it's definitely 50. It's probably 60 years old, right? So all its tails all crumbled away and its fins. And the first year it was 19 pound. Well, so the first time I walked around the lake, I saw some really nice fish, and I saw a fish. It looked like the one in that photo, which got me quite excited. But then one of the first fish to come out was that fish, and I was like, oh my God, it's actually that fish. You know, it really is. So I know for a fact that is 50, 60 years old. I mean, I hashtag it world's oldest carp on Instagram. So it got caught every week, about 19 pounds, started looking a bit tatty. And I said to my mate, at the end, this is 2015. I said to my mate, if you catch it like in November, last week of the season, put it in the ladies' pond next door, just let it go off and enjoy the rest of its life. Anyway, it didn't get seen for 18 months. And I presumed it was dead, but then it came out and it was like, I think it was 25, 26 pound. But it looked a lot better. It looked shiny, looked cleaner, looked invigorated, you know, by obviously eating some bait. So over the years, it's got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I think the last time a customer had it out, it was 37.5, which was about 18 months ago. So when I got to the lake, I found a couple of corpses floating. I mean, as you do, if you have livestock, you have dead stock. It's as simple as that. And they're both sort of around that size. Now, the average size in my lake is probably upper 40s. So a fish of that size is unusual. So I'm thinking, I can't tell because they're way too far gone. You couldn't even tell whether they're a mirror or common. I think, that's my chance gone again. So it was completely out of my head. Right, every time for the last 5 years, I've landed a fish. I've looked in that landing net to see if it's this Jurassic. And anyway, I've gone and got my torch and my light, and it's pouring with rain. So I've put my coat on, I've put my hat on, got my waders on, and I turn the light on, and sure enough, there's those apple slices sitting in the net. I was going, oh my God, I've actually caught it. So like on that overnighter, I'm just standing there in total darkness on my own with the fish that I've been after all this time. Just climbed in the water, unhooked it, quick way, stupid, useless self-take, slipped him or her away. And it was like, oh my God, that's absolutely incredible. And even though I had no rods out, I mean, I just sort of sat there like in the darkness, drinking a bit of rum from a hip flask. It was a magic moment. And I think if you get into a bit of a routine of blanking or spending time on your own, or long traveling to lakes and stuff, everyone gets a little bit despondent at a time, and yet those moments out of the blue, just totally make it. They're the special things. I've probably had 1,000 carp bigger than that. Well, no, actually, it was the biggest it's ever been. I'll revise that. I've probably had 300 or 400 carp bigger than that, but that was certainly one that meant, if not the most, right up there.
Sorry, how big was it, Jason, mate?
I promised the fish I wouldn't tell anyone. Honestly, all my mates have been asking me, and they said, did it go over 40? Did it go over 40? And I said, why does it matter? It's over 60 years old. It's
exactly, yeah.
It's an incredible fish. I mean, but I've only seen pictures of it, and what I didn't realise was how fat it was and how hard it scrapped as well. I mean, it really looked like a healthy fish, which is what you want.
Mm.
Is this fish got sort of like a bit of history for coming out on the same baits, etc.? Is it sort
No,
of a creature of habit, or?
Well, okay. So looking back through the records, it's got a history of coming out in May and September, which are obviously the first weeks to sell. If you're a fishery owner, the first weeks people want are May or September, and some people even charge more for those weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So inevitably, they're the weeks that I never get to fish the lake. So that's a possible reason why I've never caught it. So the last sort of 12 months, I've been doing a bit of intel. I've been ringing around asking everyone where they had it from. And I had a couple of spots in mind where, it might come from. But also I went back to the same thing where thinking these old fish, their receptors are that much more honed or developed. And they're more sensitive to chemicals or extreme smells, and a more natural sort of bait is going to be more likely to catch them. So I was driving to the lake with that in mind, but I'd pretty much forgotten about it by then. I mean, it's a crazy thing. So the first 60 pounder out of the lake I caught on an overnighter in February, where I was sleeping under the stars in -3 just to get a lorry load of gravel. And I had a 63 common, which was pretty much on an overnighter last year for similar reasons. And people go, Jesus, man, you've gone to France for one night. Well, I've gone for business or, fishery development reasons, not for fishing, but it's just crazy the way things have panned out. It's almost, like they do happen for a reason sometimes, but with a little bit of thought thrown in as well, perhaps.
Yeah, that's it. So this fish, sorry, mate. What bait was that? Did you have that on then? Was this on your sort of amalgamation bait you've just?
No, it wasn't. So I call it Great White. So it's a fish meal with just one liquid additive in, 1 mil of it, but it's and it smells of nothing. It really it doesn't smell of anything, but it's an incredible fish catcher. I mean, it will catch anything. It will catch. Some people see as a bonus, some people don't. I've even had perch, and not retrieving, like actually picking the bait up from a baited area. It will literally catch any fish that swims, and I've never had a boilie that will catch perch before. Now that's it's a bit bizarre, but it's that good of a tractor, and it cost me £600 for a litre.
Oh wow!
And I'm not sure how much longer I'm even going to be able to get it for.
I think you spoke about this, didn't you, on the last podcast?
Yeah. So yeah, it's done me well, that bait. And to be honest, then the following day I packed up and I went on to Moulinots. And I was sitting there and hadn't seen a fish all day, and was watching. So I'd gone in the middle, and there was a swim either side that my mate Ian could have the next day, and he was going to have the choice. So the one I was going to recommend, there was fish bubbling in there, and as the evening came, the sun started going down. I see a couple of smaller carp jump in it, and I thought, well, I'm not going to stick a rod in there just for the sake of them. But then 5 minutes later, I see a really big fish roll in there, and we're talking 2 rods from the bank, or half a wrap or whatever it is. I don't know. I thought, okay, I'm going to put a rod in there now, and sure enough, like I just got to sleep about midnight, and that rattled off, and that was 57.14. So that was on that bait, and that was 1 rod fishing, one rod length out in the next swim. So my friend Ian turned up the next day, and I said to him, look, mate, I've just had that. And just as I was talking to him, it went off again out the blue, and I think that was 48, nearly 50 again. I said, well, that's your swim, mate, if you want it, or else you can have my swim, or you can have that one. I don't really care now. Do you know what I mean? So he went in there, and it never did another fish the whole week, 7 days. He didn't have a bite in there after that, which was a bit weird.
Is there many anglers on the lakes over there at the moment?
No, well, I think they'll have sort of 10 people on there a regular week. There was 5 of us. I mean, the owner, Terry, I was catching one a night and one in the day, but the average size was 50 pounds, so you're not going to argue.
No.
I mean, it's a real nice venue that I fished some years ago. He moved in opposite me, and he was fishing nowhere near me. You know what I mean? He was literally only fishing his own margin, but it cut me off for 36 hours. I mean, that's the effect lines or angling can have on fish, just to change the dynamic. But then, after that 36 hours, the next fish I had was this incredible scaly fish. I mean, I put it up on Facebook, got about 500 likes. It was, when it went in the net, it was just a crazy fish. And he said to me, he remember telling a customer, it had come out at 32 or 33 pound, and he said, imagine that when it's 40. And it hadn't been seen for 3 or 4 years. Now it was nearly 50.
Wow.
It's one of the best looking fish, and I put it up because it was 2 days after the Jurassic, and I put them up together, and everyone goes, oh, I like the one on the left. And I'm just thinking, it's a lovely fish, but I'd much rather have had the one on the right all day long. You know what I mean? I've been slightly obsessive about catching that fish for 5 years. But when I came back to my own lake, that was the way the session went. I literally ticked off every fish I've never had, one after another. And it got to a point where there's one other old scaly one in there. I'm guessing he's a really old fish as well, but we don't know for sure. And then once that one went in, it was like, do you know what? It's completed now. A little bit of the magic's sort of gone. I've literally had them all, but it's taken me long enough.
Yeah. So this is your lake, isn't it? This one.
Yeah. So I mean, back at Moulinots, I mean, I had 14 fish there, of which half of them were 50 pound. I think the smallest one I had was 37 out of the 14. So really, really average, a high average. And then the last night, I run out of the great white bait, and I'd been sticking the red bait out all the time. I've been thumping it out all the time, but I was putting off using it because I didn't want to. And even then, I still thought I'd use the grey one. And I thought, I've been chucking it in like all week. I'll put a couple of rods out on it, and I put it out. And then that night, first fish, common, 60 pounder. Yeah. So, okay, that's given me a bit of confidence to fish with it now.
And
Then when
carry on.
Then when we went back to Badger, it was just crazy. It was just like I left it. I mean, I'd been telling Ian, I was like, I couldn't keep 2 rods in the water, and it was just the same. And like Ian was in, and it was a tension, a stocky, and I think my first fish back was the half ling. I've got to look at a few notes for this because I can't even remember the order. But
you posted your notebooks up on your group page, didn't you?
I keep
impressive list of weights in there.
I keep meticulous records. So I mean, I knew for a fact that from in the last calendar year exactly, I'd had 117 fish over 40 pound. That's in the last year. And Century put that up on a post on the website, and I got a bit of negative feedback from people, which, you know, I always think that if you either say nothing or say well done, mate, you know, or scroll on, you know what I mean? There's no reason to be abusive to someone you don't know at all, is there?
Yeah, people, you know, sat behind a keyboard, they're pretty confident, aren't they? We've had little bits of the podcast. We've been pretty fortunate, I guess. Actually, it's been pretty much mostly positive, and we can take the piss out of ourselves quite easily as well. So we're sort of quite all right with it. What was people's umbrage with you there?
I think that I was fishing and I was catching, and that presumably I'd been on a lot of waters, but so I am doing a lot more fishing now. I've been single now for 2 years after 20 years of being married, and I'm doing a lot more fishing, and it's much more important in my life because I've worked really hard and I've saved a bit of money and I've given myself some time to do it. But I mean, most of those 100 fish over 40 pound, and it's also close to 40 over 50 as well, have come from 9 or 10 weeks fishing. You know, I haven't been sat on the bank all the time, and plus they've all come from different lakes. Someone said, "Oh, anyone can catch 140s out their own lake," and I thought, do you know what, mate? I'd love to have a lake where you could just turn up and catch 140s. I mean, how nice would it be to own a place like that? But it was, do you know what? It was a bit like that. So my mate Ian, he was catching the stockies, and really, really pleased with them. You know, they're all up sort of 5 pound. You know, they look like they're fat and they might spawn. And fish in my lake have never really spawned, you know, because I think they're old and sterile, and I think the new ones have pushed them around and energized them a bit, and I think it's a good thing. But my first fish back on the bank was 50 pound 12, which is a half linear that I'd never caught. And then that same afternoon, having just got there, I had a 54 pounder, which was actually the first fish that ever come out of my lake at 30 pound. It was 31 pounder 5 years ago. That's just done 54. Then I had another one called Discus 5212, which is a fish that I'd ticked off my list. And then I had a common 41. So that was my 4 fish for that day, 3 50s and a 40. And I'd put in a solid 6 hours graft, shoveling gravel, and mowing grass as well in between that, you know. Which is pretty crazy, but not nearly as crazy as the next morning, because I set the alarm for 5 o'clock and I thought I'd do 4 hours fishing, 9 o'clock on the button. I'll have a cup of coffee. Once I drank my coffee, knock it on the head, start doing jobs, start raking all the margins, cutting down the branches, dragging them down, getting them ready for burning. But it's pouring with rain still all the time. I put the rods out. First fish, I've got an oil painting on my wall of it. It's a fish called Big Red. Caught it the first year in my lake at 37 pound. That come out at 59 and a few ounces, weren't quite 60, but it's a real long fish. Then I had one 5114, which is a fish, a really, really pretty fish. It's got like a funny V tail, but lots of dotted scales. And I was absolutely adamant that one was dead because I've not seen it for 3 years. And I really, you know, I'd wanted to catch that, and I just presumed it had gone. So I was delighted to see that. Same weight, I hadn't put any weight on. Then I had another one, 55.8, which is called single scale, which is another example of the same thing, really. A lad had it at 51 pounds, and it's just this one big scale in the middle. And I thought, where's that come from? I've never ever seen it. And I went through the records, and the only time it had been caught was the first year when I'd had it at 28 pound. But then I also had it in the winter at 57, and this time it was 55. So literally in 3 hours of fishing, getting up a 59, a 51, and a 55. Just crazy. So gone off, done a full day's collar, cutting down trees, shoveling gravel till I absolutely ate, pouring with rain. It's like black skies, got back in the bivvy. Right, it's rain stopped for a bit, sunshine's come out, so I've put one rod out, and then it's the other scaly one I wanted, Chunky Monkey, which is it's 38 pound, but again, you know, it's couldn't care less about the weight. It's just such a fish, you know. And I had it in the net, and I was looking at it, I was thinking, oh, I'm so pleased to catch you. You know, I really, that's done it now. You know, that's the full set, if you like. You know, everything, and the photos come out really nicely of that.
Days.
Was put it back. Thought, you know, I've only been fishing half an hour. I'll stick another rod out. It's gone on. So Ian in this time has had about 20 fish, and I think he's had something like 15 stockies, 3 tension, 2 bream, you know, and he's just seen me catch 150 after another, and sure enough, the next one, 52.8 as well. You know, just mental. So, like 750s in probably a total of 24 hours fishing, and like I say, the lake it isn't like that really. You know, it can be quite a tough lake at times.
Is that because it's not been fished, Jace?
So one, Ian's got so much confidence in that great whitebait. He was using the wafters, and like, which are nice and critical and catch everything that swims past it. I had told him that I'd thrown in 25 kilo of this plumbian bait, right? And when I threw it in, I'd done it to feed them. So I'd walk around the perimeter of the lake, throwing it as far as I could throw it, and then like the last 10 stood in the middle, just sticking it all over. So it went all over. So they were really looking for it. And to be honest, right, I occasionally fish pop-ups. Most of the time I fish wafters. It was probably the first time I caught on straight bottom bag, straight out the bag for about 2 years. Right. And I mean, someone's like said, "Can you take a picture of your rigs and show me?" And it's like, you really don't want to see them, mate. I don't use chod rigs. I don't use Ronnie rigs. I don't use spinner rigs. I don't put swivels on. Right, it's a hook tied on with any coated braid that I happen to have. I think they're all pretty much of a much. Tied on, and then tied on the swivel at the other end, about 10 to 12 inches, which is long for most people, I guess. Knotless knot to a really sharp hook. You know, I'm good at sharpening hooks. I can knock a point on it. And I saw someone the other day, like, you know, one fish, one hook. So I on that trip, I hooked 42 fish. Now, like my line just exploded. I can't explain it. I think it got trapped around a stick that was blowing on the wind, you know, and it just pulled tight. So let's say I hooked 41 fish. I landed 41 fish. And over the course of that 3 weeks, I changed the hooks on each rod once.
No way.
Yeah, I'm telling you, and I didn't lose a single one. Size 6 barbless, sharpened up, just one stroke, put a little point back on it every hook, every time.
Wow.
10 days fishing, one hook. Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Which hook is that? What do you use?
Mostly I use Jamie Peters hooks, and J Precision.
Oh yeah.
And they tend to be quite a thick, strong gauge of wire, and I've got used to using them, and I can put a point straight back on them, literally with like one thing. Although I have found, like, I can't get on with any of those jag files. NGT tackle. What do people call them? No good tackle. They make this little round file. It costs £3. It's the business. You know, they can certainly make one good bit of tackle. It's that. I mean, literally go on eBay and buy yourself one. It's £3. They're fantastic. You know, it's 2 strokes of that. I can put a good point back on a hook. And I'm not saying do it. I'm not saying Christ. You know what I mean? You know, use the same hook all week. I mean, part of me is probably quite lazy. But when you've been shoveling gravel for 8 hours a day, equally, then I can't necessarily be bothered to do much rig tying sort of thing. You know, you just want to do a bit of fishing. Yeah, my rigs are appalling, but you know, they work.
Is that file got like it's rounded, isn't it? But it's got a flat edge.
It's round. It's got like a little groove in it.
Right.
But I mean, I've got loads of them, but they just seem to stay good. You know, I mean, the Jag ones, I use them for like 2 sessions, and it's like they've got nothing left on it, no grit left on. You know, like a bit of Australian cricketer sandpaper.
Yeah, I found a file, just like an eBay special. It's like you say, it's a few quid, and it's got a really wide sort of flat edge. I can't remember what grit it is. They do sell loads of different grits, like different gauges. It's like 400 or something. And this thing's like a butterfly knife. It's sort of in a plastic case, and you slide it open. It's like the blade sort of pops out, but it's the file. And that's the best one I've ever had, to be honest. And it was just a few quid, but I found that one's lasted longer than like the Jag ones, etc. I mean, the Jag ones remove a lot of material off the hook quickly, but they don't last long.
And I don't think you need to either. I mean, like a chemically sharpened hook, you know, overnight. I mean, that's not chemically sharp. I mean, hand sharpened. I mean, so I do change around a bit sometimes, you know, and if you leave them out longer than 24 hours, they can go quite rusty in themselves. But also you can use that to your advantage. I mean, if you come back and you've got an absolutely like crystal clear point on it, then you think, oh, it's been in the silt, or you know, it's been in a bit of weed or something. You know, even that gives you some information back. You know, but if there's any young kids or you know newcomers to the sport coming, that would be my advice on rigs and tackle, rather than looking how you can stick an extra swivel or something on your rig or an extra bit of tungsten putty. Just find like a hook sharpener you like, and just get used to you know giving. I mean, Christ, how can it not be an advantage having a razor sharp hook, right?
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you another thing as well, right? People say just use a bigger lead. Obviously, that makes sense. But, you know, if you're casting into thick silt, you could be fishing a foot below it. I mean, so the start of the week, I was using something that I'd made myself, like an oil powder, and for my method feeder. So I had 1.5 ounce method feeders on. Now, after about 5 days, that run out. And I've got no doubt about it at all that did get me some extra bites, for sure. But instead of swapping over and putting a 3 ounce lead on, I just kept the 1.5 ounce method feeders on. And you know what? I was still getting screaming takes and gooder colds. And I think it's sort of like, the bolt machine, you know, with the surface, it's the tension against the water, the surface area. You know, it acts like something bigger, but also, you know, with the heavy lead, if it hasn't ejected and it's donking down, it gives the fish something to use to get rid of the hook. So I think using the lighter lead, if you can, or the method feeder as well, you're going to lose less fish. Plus, I think I'm fishing much better, right? I'm fishing more now than I ever have done. And I've definitely noticed an improvement. I'm doing less stupid things, you know, as a regular way of life.
Maturing, mate. Learning mistakes.
No, it's not maturing. It's just the more you do something, the better at it you get, right? You know, it's as simple as that. You know, I'm sure if I mess around with that fish finder on my boat for another week, I'll probably work out how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Although technology is not your strong point, is it, Jason?
Well, apparently not. No. I mean, I come back from this session. I felt absolutely brain dead. I just bought a Chromebook, and I've had to set it up for a secondary user because I can't remember the password. So I sorry, I'll buy another one. But yeah, I bet this like Android thing for the TV. You know, I can't get that to work at all. It comes on sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's just having lousy internet, really.
Yeah. So just to sort of let's take it back a little bit to the the design of this bait that's come about by sort of mistake almost. So you were almost sort of looking at it like you've got an oil-based flavor and an alcohol-based flavor, and you think that it's sort of like the different release time of attractants into the water is sort of favoring you there in a roundabout way.
Well, not in a roundabout way. You want your bait to be working all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't know when the fish are going to arrive in your swim. They might come in 24 hours later. You know, plus, let's say they come in 4 days later. How much left of your bait is there? I'm saying to people, you know, think about your bait more by design and what it's actually doing. So chuck it in some water, check out how soft it goes, check out what chemicals are coming out. You know, take it after a day or so, see what you can still smell in it. You know, see what attractiveness there is. I mean, with using powder flavors and palatants, you're giving the actual dry mix an identity, and it's always going to have some sort of identity, which I think is why, you know, things like fish meals, you know, liver, green lip mussel work so well, because they're still in that base mix until it actually breaks up and it's gone, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So is this something you think you're going to sort of like, is it going to change the way you design a bait in the future? Do you think you're going to do something like this, or it didn't have that bigger impact on you? You've muted yourself again, Jace.
Are we back in the game?
Yeah, you're back in the game, mate.
Yeah. It's time for another Guinness. No, I've always looked at that, you know, and from my own fishing, I don't tend to go to the same places very often. You know, I might go once as a fact finding mission, 2 go and do it. If I enjoy it, I might go back a 3rd time. But generally speaking, the world's a very, very big place, and I'm looking for somewhere else. So my bait needs to work, you know, straight away. And any bait that I sell to anyone else, they'll say like, it's a good bait will work from the off, and it will keep working. It doesn't necessarily need pre-baiting, and it should compete with everything else that's going in as well. But you've got to look at what suits you. If you're a sort of person that goes for 12 hours, you want most of your attraction in the bait front loaded to come out in that first 12 hours, you know. If you're a sort of person who's on a lake for a year, then maybe look at one of the fish meals with a strong identity, right? If you're fishing for big fish or fish that haven't been seen or wary fish, then, you know, go for that great white or something, you know, but tailoring the approach, their approach to what they're using, rather than just, oh, this is called X amount of 20s, X amount of 30s, it must be good, you know. I mean, one bloke always wants to buy what I'm using, right? But I mean, in the case of that last bait, you know, I could have had it as a job lot for next to nothing because I didn't like it. I was only using it through necessity. But it's given me a few ideas. And even since I've been back the last 4 days, I've sourced a couple of things from America, which I really, really like the look of. And I think it's quite different. Yeah. So.
You can give us any little hints of what sort of avenues you're going down there, or keep that quiet for now?
Yeah. So one is like a natural chemical that you find in all the onion family.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a little teaser right there. Like
it. But I mean, so I don't put anything in a bait that doesn't have a function. I don't really like fillers as a bait maker. You have to. You know, I'd rather put bread in than soya because I think soya blocks up the natural emulsification of the eggs, right? But even when I'm making a stick mix, I'm not just gonna chuck something in to bind it up or bulk it out. Not so much stick mix for me, but I like using method mixes, and I carefully consider what goes in there. You know, like whether it's the onion granules or the oil powders, stuff like that, and that is often my first line of testing. I'll use something in a ground bait or a method feeder before I think about putting it in a boilie as well.
Do you look at sort of like, do you ever do your own ferments or anything? I know you talk about onion a lot. At the moment, I've been sort of fermenting garlic, which is what I think in quite a unique way, which I probably won't go into too much on the podcast. But have you been doing anything like that with the onion side of things?
So this flat is horrendous, right? It's full of fishing tackle. It's a tiny flat. Right? I've now got pellets stacked everywhere because it's in French from a French company with French labels on, and I'm thinking that could be handy. There's loads of particles here. So at the moment, I've got a couple of buckets of kefir grains on, which I'm germinating giant maize in. Yeah. I'm not a particle person, but I don't just use boilies when I fish. I like to use a lot of slop and a lot of soup, and bulk everything out and try and get something happening. Even if it's from like the small fish as a start, or just cloud in the water, whatever.
Feddies, do you know what, fellas? I'm desperate. I've got to run to the toilet, so now's probably a good time if either of you need to leg it. It's either that, or I'll let you two chat, and I've got to run.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, Mum.
A little baby bladder. I've got a
Yeah.
question for you. Do you know what? I'm pretty pissed. I looked at the time. I've started drinking 8 hours ago, and it's finally catching up with me. I'm feeling a little bit too far gone, but I jump in anyway, just while Pete's taking a leak. We put on Instagram really last minute that we were going to interview you tonight, Jason. And we've got a few questions, and we'll probably just do some rapid fire towards the end, if that's all right.
Yeah.
But one of the guys asked about the great white, which obviously you've just been discussing that, or you touched upon it in the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but he said you only made it in barrels, and he wants to know why that was. Is that right?
Yeah. So I used to do the bait out of the garage myself, and I'd always have everything in stock. And I'd go out and I'd do my shift at work, like 10 or 12 hours, and I'd come home. And even if it was midnight, I would still book all the orders on. Because of my personal circumstances, I can't do that now. So now I have Jeff Bowers helps me out. He sends all my orders out for me. He's a good friend, Jeff. We've known each other a long time, and without him, I couldn't do the logistics of it. Now, sometimes it takes the orders a bit longer, but I also have an area of his factory which he lets me use for storing stuff, right, free of charge. But I can hold about a ton of bait there. Now, in a really busy week, I could do a ton of bait. So I've sort of, I've gone up to 4 lines now. So I only do them in 15s and 18s. And it reflects how much bait I could store, literally, and have it in stock. So I can't really have more than a ton of bait made at a point. Now, the good thing about that is, even though it's a sort of shelf life or a bait that doesn't go off, it's always fresh. Whatever you get has always been made in the last couple of weeks. But if I did every size going, I would only be able to do one bait. Now, when it's quiet, I'll do custom orders. If someone wants a load of 24 mils, loads of 12 mils, I'll do them. But when it's busy, it's because of stock rotation. That's the only reason. And with the great white, because it's such a radical bait about it, everything about it is radical. The appearance of it, the fact that it's almost got no attractors to it. It is a nutritional bait. I just thought, let's do something completely different. Let's make it a pellet or something,
Yeah.
So that's why I was going to say, I'm always totally transparent about everything, and always have been. But that's the one thing I can't be. I mean, literally 2 or 3 times a week, I have to look with these suppliers whether I can buy some of this additive, and if I can, I'll buy it, right? And I used to get it from Poland. Now I can't get it from Poland for some reason because of the EU Brexit thing. But they will send it to Germany, and obviously Germany still in the EU, but they will send it to me. I don't know why, but they put their bit on top as well. But if someone else decided they want to buy it, there wouldn't be any for me. So that's the only reason. I mean, we've had various conversations across different platforms with different people about, the composition of Scopex or Rod Hutchinson's Monster Crab, and what exactly is in it. Well, this book that I've done with Empress now, the recipe's in there. If you want to know exactly, then it's in there. And look, there's other things like that as well. There's not many secrets. I'll share most things for most people, and I'm sure there's I think there's 10 or 11 chapters in the book on bait.
Yeah, we got to talk about this book in a minute, but you said you listened to the John Baker episode that we did. He said that he's producing the exact Scopex recipe. Do you make him right on that? Is it exactly the same recipe you've got?
I don't know, because I've not looked at his, or
okay.
He hasn't confirmed, but say definitely like the Hutchinson monster crab. Yeah.
You're giving out these recipes in your new book?
They're in there, word for word, so you can see exactly. And there's other secrets as well. Just think people are just guessing, and they're saying there's this. So it's there, black and white. You want to know what's in it, that's what's in it. No, good luck.
Nice, mate.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to this book. I mean, if you remember on our last podcast we did together, you mentioned this, didn't you? You said I might do a book. Do you remember?
I've been doing well. So I've done sort of how many have I done? I've done 3 like composition books.
Yeah.
I've just sort of put together as an editor. But this, so this goes back to my first ever cart by design, which was 1984. And the first section is all my early fishing days as a teenager, young 20s, which is sort of Waveney Valley. St Ives at the end of it, but sort of Hertfordshire, that sort of area, Essex. And the second section is all bait, and that I think it was the deciding factor in that I've got to the point where I'm just as likely to forget stuff now as think of something new. So almost certainly, your ideas change, but how much literature is there actually about carpbait? I remember talking to Tim Paisley a couple of years ago when he brought out his one, and he said, "Look, I make no bones about it. It's not a new book. It's just literally all the stuff I've written about bait in one place as a composition. Just for the record, for the people that are interested, it's no more than that. I'm sure a few of the things that are in there will be sort of quite eye-opening, because I never really followed any pattern or anyone else's rules. I don't see anyone else's baits. I just do my own thing. But obviously worked in the industry as well and know a few of the secrets, sort of thing.
Sounds good to me, mate. I'm sure it'll go down well. What's the release date for it? And if anyone's interested in it, how would they go about ordering it?
Well, it's at Impress now, so it's entirely in their hands. I've sold, I think, 300 copies now, pre-orders. So you can pre-order it through both my websites, which is theabait.com, or the Fishing Lake, which is ldbcarp.com. So everyone that pre-orders it prior to it coming out will get like a signed bookmark with a number on, and we'll have a draw for all those numbers, and the winner of that I'll take on a all expenses paid holiday to France somewhere, which might be Moan Lake or it might be somewhere else, but it'll be all sort of travel and bait and everything thrown in. Yeah.
Very nice, mate.
Smuggled bait.
Me and Pete will have to enter. Can you imagine if we went? Fuck yeah.
Carps. Well, right. So I had a lad come round my lake, around my house last night. Well, 3 lads, and they're taking some new mats and the showers. They're going to plumb them in for me and repair the pipes and stuff. But they're actually a paying customer, and I carried this stuff out to his van, and he was showing me like all the panels in his van that he'd unscrewed and put the bait in there. And I was thinking, oh my God, it's smuggling, but the very fact that you've done that, you're doing wrong and you're trying to hide it. And that's where they're going to have an issue with you, But apart from that, right, imagine they put them through the 3D scanner and it comes up that there's all this stuff.
Yeah, shit.
They'll go, fucking hell, we've got something here. And they'll open it up and it'll be like a bit of method mix or something. Mental. Well, you can imagine it, can't you? Because they know exactly where to look, oh, mate.
It's a real problem, isn't it? It's sad, really. It's kind of sad that it's come to this.
It is. Without opening up the whole Brexit worm again, I don't think anyone needs to go there. What's done is done, right? I just don't think anyone knew what they were voting for. It's not like the Scottish referendum where they had the choice: you can be part of England or you can fuck off. And even that, 6 or 7 years later, they want to do it again, don't they? But I mean, I don't think anyone knew what they wanted. It's like, we want to close our borders. Well, the only person that we've closed our borders to are our own people at the moment. Well, it's kind of ironic, really. But it's not sour grapes, mate. I mean, I've lost 40,000 pounds through COVID, through the lake, through customers not going. But I've reinvented myself, and I've kept myself in employment, and I've kept myself working, which has been good in its own right. Met new people, done new things.
Yeah. Do you see yourself moving out on the continent at all, Jason?
No.
No.
No. I kind of like being near society, not too close to it. I mean, there's like two girls and a bloke that have been punching each other outside this window now for about half an hour, screaming and shouting. I don't know if you've got any of that on the audio. I've been sort of watching the development, like you do. You just nosy treacle beaking out the window. But no, I like occasionally going to football. I like having Costa coffee, and all that sort of stuff. I like being near the airports. I like being near the ports. I like being near my friends and stuff. I'd love to have a lake in England that I could just have to myself, but that's lottery money. It's never going to happen. I mean, even lakes in France now have got really hard to find. There's more people looking than properties available.
Yeah, I can believe that.
Plus, the world's getting smaller. Well, it's not. It's actually been made a lot larger by COVID. But generally speaking, COVID aside, take that out the picture. You can go anywhere, do anything, and there's this. For me, I love travel. It's not just the fishing. It's getting there, turning up somewhere completely new where you don't necessarily know what the possibility is, and yeah, love it, mate.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, I mean, obviously, you've just got back from a hell of a trip to France. Is there any other stories there that you want to go over before we kind of circle back around and move on to something else?
Well, it was just like carrying on from last year. So, like last year, I got furloughed from one of my jobs, which was basically going to pay all my sort of bills for 2 or 3 months. And I was thinking, do you know what? No one's going to France. No one's taking their bookings. I could go almost anywhere I want to go, and there's no control over it. Do you know what I mean? They're not enforced. So I went all over the place last year and just had an absolutely insane time catching loads of big fish, and it just carried on from there. But the end of the trip, I mean, after 21 days of just sitting in mud, pouring rain, and everything being damp and smelly and cold. I mean, Jesus. I mean, there was frost some night from May. Just crazy weather.
Yeah, savage. Yeah.
And then the last 3 days, I was back on my own again. I went to a French public water, which is quite a big water. I'm booked on there for 3 whole weeks in July, and I went to sort of scope it out because I've booked this one particular swim, right, and it's a swim no one likes, but it commands a lot of water. And for a public water, no one can really interfere with you because it's sort of on the end. And I got there and I'd had enough by then. I mean, the wind was howling, and I was the wrong end of the wind. I found some fish in a bay. I went around there stalking in waders for 3 hours. It poured the whole time. Next morning, I thought, I'm not going to let it beat me. So I got back in the car, drove around there, put 3 rods out in the bay, and I sat in my car with a sander box, watching the rain smash down on the bonnet for 3 hours. And I managed to put up with that for 8 hours before I went back to my swim and put them out. But then I'm lying in my bivvy that last night, and I could just hear all the fish badoshing, like over where my left-hand rod should be. And I'm thinking, okay, so they will come up the end of this lake, and I'm sure with 3 weeks and a lot of bait, hopefully if they don't take it off me, I can really influence the decision here and have a good time. But again, it's testing yourself. I go away for a week with my friends, like a lot of people do, and it's sort of a semi-holiday. And we got to the point now where, like, even though I do keep records of all my fish and photos of them, and I write everything down, you know, it's all about the experience. You know, I've had good weeks
Yeah.
where I've blanked, and I'm not making that up. It's absolutely true. I mean, Turkey, we only did about 8 hours fishing a day, and it was like being on the ocean. We went out in these boats, like a big tourist boat, and we fished from the roof of that, and like 300 yards out with a Zodiac, and then the wind got up, and you know you had to go back again, and you couldn't. Too dangerous to stay out there, and it was sort of brackish water. You could see like all the mullet shoaling up like you do on David Attenborough, or the bait balls and all that. And I was thinking, Christ, are we actually in the sea? And then one of my mates did have one out of the blue. He had like a mid-30 common. I was going, mate, that is so lucky. You know, if someone said to you, you can't leave here until you catch one. I mean, I could still be there now. But it was a great holiday, you know, because we was all in the bar every night, you know, having nice food and with our friends, you know, drinks and stuff. It was good. Caught nothing.
That's the way it goes, isn't it? The last time you updated me on this recent trip that you've just come back from, I think it was towards the end, but tell us if you've had any more, because people love numbers, don't they? Let's be honest. You had 260s, 12 50s, and 4 40s, and probably a fuckload of 30s.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, 42 fish. Two or three of my stockies, but other than that, everything else mid-30s and up. So since the start of COVID lockdown last year, I think I'm on 145 fish.
That's incredible.
Over 40 pounds.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the book there. It's 42 fish over 50 pounds. But again, I love catching fish, right? So a bit I took from the Bill Cotton interview he did, and also like, well, I've seen Steve Briggs has said the same thing. He said, like, if you catch the most fish, or you go out your way to, you know, rinse the place, you're probably going to miss out on some of the real big ones. And a prime example of that is the lad fishing opposite me at Moulino. He'd been to the lake 30 times now. You know, that's not my bag, but really nice lad, really got on well with him, you know, and he loves the lake. It's a lovely lake, right? And he'd been there 2 weeks, and he had kept his left hand rod along this dam under this bush, fed it every day, baited it every day, but he'd had nothing there the whole time. And then the last night we were there, he had the late record, 67 pound common, you know, and that was just a prime example of that. And I think this time of year, even more so, you know, just before they're thinking about spawning, those big females will try and hide away or stay away from the males as remote as they can, you know, because they don't want to get jostled before they need to be and all that sort of stuff. And I think sometimes if you're fishing for the biggest fish that are available in that particular venue, you have to target them. You have to look at a bait that's more likely to catch them and an area where they're more likely to be. You know, and certainly people do that in the UK, don't they? They look at when they were caught, where they were caught from, all that sort of thing. You know, it's doing your intel. I'm not like that. I do like setting myself targets, and I do like that rod to be bent regularly. You know, the day I get bored of catching 20s and 30s, I probably need to give up, right?
I would say yes, mate. I don't know if Sam's got technical problems. He's vanished by the looks of it.
I probably bored him to death. I think I was cracking on there for quite a while. You know?
No, he asked the question.
Numbers. But I run a bait company, and people send me well, it's more of like an evolved hobby, right, than a company. I don't have field testers. It's word of mouth, you know. I mean, I don't need publicity. I mean, a lad today, he helped me out last year. He helped me out. His wife helped me out proofreading the book, so I sent him some bait. He's just had a late record today, 36 pound. So absolutely chuffed. And there was some comment like, you know, it's not the sort of size of your fish or something. So, mate, you catch what's in front of you. You know what I mean? I go on Instagram, if I see a picture of a kid holding an 11-pounder with a big smile on his face and a big thick mat underneath, he gets a like every time.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, carp care, that's something that's sort of oiking me a bit at the moment. You know, all this standing fish up on their belly stuff. You know what I mean? or don't get me on that one. You know?
Yeah, to be honest with you, Jace, I don't see a great deal of it. I just see more people sort of complaining about it, if that makes sense. I don't know if there's a lot of people out there want to sort of just virtue signal a little bit, or whether there's a lot of it going on.
It gets mirrored, you know what I mean? If so, I mean, I love Alan Blair, right? He's infectious. His videos are great. He loves a brace shot. He loves one standing up his stomach. But Alan likes catching all sizes of fish, you know, and you know, having a sort of £15 or a £20 or whatever stood up on the mat isn't anything like having an ancient old 60-pounder stood up on its vital organs, you know. So then I saw a picture at that public water. The woman that was come round, she said, "Oh look, this has just been out down the other end of the lake," and it was like a 68-pounder, and the bloke had just took a picture of it, just sitting on the mat, stood up on its stomach, and walked away and was taking pictures of it. Now, those fish are going to live a lot longer if they don't come out of the water. You know, that's a fact. You could argue, and people do argue. You know, you look at Peter Springate's brace shots from whenever 1980, 1990, and those fish lived a long, fruitful life. Well, yeah, but they're not 50, 60, 70 pounders, are they? One, but also we know better now. Like, so there wouldn't be carp in as many lakes if people didn't move them around. I mean, it was a fact of life, right? In the 80s, people used to move. This is going to be quite controversial now, but people used to move carp. And to some extent, it didn't do that much damage, but we now know the viruses that can be spread. I mean, actually, people putting goldfish from their tank into a pond is even worse. But even with France, right? And there was a big thing last year where they bought, you know, the massive common from Shantycock and put it in a little pond. Now, I'm 100% totally against that. You know, I want to catch that fish in a fantastic environment where it lived. You know, don't do that. But if you go back again to the first, you know, anglers that used to go over to Shanty and that, when the French caught those fish, they would knock them on the head and eat them, or take them home and show their family and throw them in the bin. So the guys that were taking them, putting them in their lakes, you know what I mean? They were probably saving them from a fate, if you like. But we've moved on. We know better. You know, everything in life, when you get more knowledge, you get more understanding, and you know what's right and wrong. And I just think with the whole fish care thing, it's gone backwards. You know, seeing pictures of someone standing there with 5 retainers, like in the water, mate. You know, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? Like, just have some respect for the fish. Take your picture, put it away, put it back. But that's why I see it. But then I've become a fishery owner now, so I probably look at things in a different way. But for me, you know, I'd rather just have a quick rubbish self-take. It looks vaguely like a fish. Wish I could do it a bit better, but that fish swim off and be happy.
Have you got any specific rules, especially for like the larger fish in your lakes, Jason?
Well, so a couple of years ago, I decided that all the fish should stay in the lake. You know, people should bring waders or boots and get in with them and weigh them and photograph them in the way. So I think statistically, the year before we'd had, again, I haven't got the statistics, but I'll give you a rough guess at what they were. It was something like 120 captures over the season. So then when we started doing that, the following year, it went to 220 or something. So it was like a 70% increase in captures by not taking the fish out of the water, which to me is proof. You know, you can only judge anything by actual results or criteria, and it's just staring you in the face. I mean, that big common Etang saucy that, you know, was the world record 100-pounder. I think that would probably still be swimming around now, and it'd probably be 120 pounds if it hadn't come out and been on the bank for so long, so many times. You know, I might be wrong, but you know, I think we owe, from the moment we hook a fish to the moment we put it back, the care is down to us as individuals, you know?
Yeah. I'm just going to quickly, sorry, Sam, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you perfectly.
Yeah, sorry, you were just messaging me. We think you were muted, mate.
Definitely not muted. No, don't know what happened.
There we go. This is a nice little edit for you later, mate.
Oh yeah, I'm editing this one on my feet.
I'll do it. It's on my laptop, actually. I'll do it, mate. I may as well.
Oh, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Hey.
Well, a bit of controversy.
No, not the controversy. Oh, we have controversy, mate. We always argue about if when people make like I've interrupted the flow of things there, so we'll probably edit this a little bit out to keep it smooth. Yeah. It's remarkable, actually. The listeners don't really realise, I guess, the amount of work that goes into sort of the production of the podcast, even though with.
I've got to say that I've been loving them because I'm doing lots of night shifts, you know, and I'm not saying it's 2 hours to kill sort of thing, but you know, I mean, you just put it on and you listen, and then you look at the clock and 2 hours have gone by, and you think that's I've been paid handsomely for listening to that for 2 hours. That's all right.
I don't know how to take that.
No, take it with a compliment.
I'm joking, mate. I'm joking.
No, seriously, and
yeah, I'm joking.
For anglers in the bivvy as well, you know, you don't need extra battery packs or anything. You just put it on, and you've got a bit of company there, haven't you? You know, block out the sound of the wind hitting the straps on the tent and stuff.
Yeah, Jason, mate. Well, I'm not just saying it, and I really wouldn't. We get a lot of messages about you and Dean. People seem to love it, and we're always getting messages, aren't we, Pete? Most days we're like, oh, just found your podcast, love the debate ones from Dean and Jason, and people really get into it. It's like you say, I think you can kind of switch off and you're driving or you're working or whatever you're doing, and you can just listen to basically like a radio, but it's about carp fishing. I think people like it. I think podcasts are good for that kind of scenario, aren't they?
I don't like listening to my own voice. It just seems really drony and stuff. But,
no, it's not. Yours isn't. No.
I do think, you know, I mean, some people say, oh, you oversimplify things, carp aren't people. But I think if you can break things down into things that, you know, everyone gets out of fishing what they want to get out of it. You know what I mean? It might be the guy that goes, buys a bag of bait, wants it to work, goes catching a few fish, really happy, you know, he's had a lovely day out. And he'll go again like next month or something like that. They're not all absolute lunatics where it runs their life and they're thinking about it all the time. But sometimes just putting something in a simple thing, it drops into place. You think, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of things comes from experience and you need to work it out yourself. So, I mean, if we're going to be controversial again, about 2 years ago, I absolutely hated the idea of using barbless hooks. You know, I mean, I was thinking they would always drop off and everyone was too important to lose to do any experiments with them. I mean, I've used nothing but barbless hooks now for about 3 years. Now, I'll also say I'm mostly fishing for a fair size of fish and they're quite a thick gauge of hook. So, like, if you're talking about commercial fisheries with a thin wire hook, I can see how it's like a cheese wire and it just rips out and you get that mouth damage. I can see that. But on big carp fishing, mate, virtually every single fish I land, and I land virtually every fish as well for a start. When they're in the net, they're unhooked. Do you know what I mean? How that makes life a lot simpler on so many levels. You know, and I'm not taking the hook out, and I go to look for the mark to put some ointment on it or something like that. Sometimes I can't even see the mark. Yeah. You know, and I'm thinking, hey, you know, I wish I'd done this years ago. Plus, the other thing is I'm using these razor sharp hooks, and like in conjunction with a 3 or 4 ounce lead, and I'm scared stiff of ripping them through my fingers and having to pull them out with the pliers as well. You know, that's probably the main reason why I started doing it in the first place. Yeah. First time you do that, you think, you poor bastard fish. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so sorry, that really hurts. Doesn't it? Yeah.
I'm with you on the barbless, and I know I'm gonna sound a bit soft now, but I think we should have a responsibility to the wildlife as well. So, like, shit happens, people crack off, you'll pot rigs in trees. Yeah, of course you should get them as much as you can, but like, just, you know, bird life, picking up discharged rigs, etc. I know most people don't give a fuck about the birds, but end of the day, it's an animal. We're out there in the environment. We should have a responsibility to yes, they're still going to get hooked up. I promise you they'll get off a barbless hook a lot fucking easier than they would a barbed hook. So for me...
Do you know what? Like, I mean, I'll just jump in quickly there.
Yeah.
That's what makes the headlines as well. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
No one's necessarily interested in like how thick your mat is, but the national newspaper are interested in seeing dead birds hanging from fishing line and stuff.
100%.
You'll be judged on that as anglers, you know. I mean, the whole lot of thing. No one really cares, you know, how fishing people are affected or their business or everything. If it's your business, it's everything. It's your life. It's your livelihood, you know. And you think, why has that creature been introduced? You know, at someone's whim, but the fact it has, and it's not going away. You know what I mean? It's too successful at what it does, and the only people again that are likely to have any clout at all are the bird people, because there's so many of them. RSPB, and if otters start making inroads into wild birds, then they'll get a voice. Anglers don't really have a massive voice, you know. You've only got to look at the pollution program. With the sewage being pumped in the rivers. I mean, it's shocking.
Totally agree, mate. No. It's a good point. It's good points. Yeah, I totally agree. I agree with you. And I mean, in this day and age where, you know, veganism and you know, animal rights is getting so much more prevalent, I'm all for animal rights. I really, really am. You know, I'm not poo-pooing that. But in this day and age, you know, angling, you got to be a little bit cautious about how we come across in the public eye, because, you know, we, like you've rightly said, we are susceptible to a lot of scrutiny, aren't we?
Social media now.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So,
I mean, horse, like welfare. I mean, I don't know if you follow horse racing at all. So, like one of the top trainers in Ireland, just before the Cheltenham Festival, was seen sitting on a dead horse with like a thumbs up on his mobile phone.
Sure.
Yeah. That front page of the national paper the next day, you know, that guy all of a sudden he doesn't have a livelihood because of that one picture. Now, I kind of think that's fair enough, mate. You know what I mean? Like, I think that was incredibly disrespectful, but and he should have about him. But mate, you get hung and tried now by social media.
Yeah. They're only getting one side of the story, aren't they? You know?
Yeah, sure.
All right, mate. Well, I tell you what, that's probably enough politics for as far as our podcast goes. We've got quite a few listener. Sorry, mate, I'm proper pissed here, fumbling my words. We've got quite a few questions from our listeners that we want to go over. I think before we go on to that, Pete, you had a couple of questions for Jason regarding what he was speaking about in the beginning, didn't you?
We sort of gone over that. It was about his bait design and things in the future. Yeah, let's go to the Facebook ones. I think we've had some great questions actually as well, haven't we?
Do you want to do them, Pete, or do you want me to? We got some from Instagram as well.
I'll tell you what, I'll go for a couple of the Facebook ones.
I don't think I'm even on your Facebook, am I? Shit.
Don't know.
Do you know what, Jason? I actually tried to tag you in the post, but I couldn't find you.
That's probably why. Yeah. Oh man, seriously, like modern life is so complicated. I mean, I come back from 3 weeks, like I'll say in the wilderness, right, and just like out of touch with everything, and sort of stressed by it as well, you know. And that's the great thing about fishing as well. Sometimes you don't even know you're having a good time when you are, and you have to just sort of sit back and think, you know, this is pretty decent.
Well, yeah, if you think modern life's complicated, mate, you wait till you get into some of these questions. Christ.
I've had 30 or more years of bait punishers. I've been asked the same. A punisher has a lifespan of about 2 years. And when they peter out, they're replaced by a fresh punisher with the same questions. Seriously.
No, yeah, some of these are pretty unique as well. I'll go in with a light-hearted one first. This is from Luke Pepper. If you could ask a carp one question, what would it be?
Wow.
It's a good question.
No. It's a great question. Yeah. It is a great question. I probably want to know about its eyesight, in all honesty.
I think that's a good shout, mate.
Yeah, how much, just how much they can see, you know. I mean, people say why don't floating baits work so well in Holland, in France? I mean, I've had fish off the St. Lawrence River Seaway in the States on floating baits, and I think it's all about water clarity, nothing else at all. It's water clarity. If you fish a water that's really clear, floating baits always work well. You know, because clearly they're seeing them, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'll tell you another one. Right, there's a cars. You might know it. You might. I think it's called Elton Palace in South London. Have you ever been there?
No.
So it's got a moat around it with carping, and I remember I was standing at the top of this castle, or whatever. I'm sure it was there, and I saw these people walk around the corner, and the carp saw them as well from 100 meters away, right, and swam towards them. Obviously, that's how they get fed with bread, right? But they had seen these people from like 100 meters, and I was thinking that's insane, you know.
Yeah, I think Dean's coming back on to go into the depths of that. He's really looked into it, all the tetramats and all that stuff. He was telling me about it on a phone call, but to be honest, he fucking lost me after about 20 minutes. But it's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, shit, you know, can you actually see the hook? Can you see the rig components? You know, when you've got feeding fish in the water and the water's clouding up. I mean, clearly they're masters of their own environment. You know, people think like, how can it find a piece of plastic sweet corn in the dark? Well, I mean, obviously they can see in the dark to some degree. You know, they can. There's no doubt about it. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, fucking, it's getting dark, it's bedtime. You know, I mean, how many lakes only fish well at night? You know, and is that because they can? I don't know. Yeah, I think that'd be my question to a carp. Like, you know, I'd give it an eyesight test.
That's a good one. And I think some fish, their eyes actually change when it gets dark. So I know all of our pupils expand and close. It's something different than that. And I don't know exactly, and I wouldn't want to speak on it because I'm definitely not an expert. And I don't know whether that would extend to carp or not. But that would be an interesting one to know, if the way they percept light and things changes when it gets dark. But yeah, anyway, sorry, mate. I'm just taking it off course. Good answer though, Jason. Good one, mate.
Very good. Right, let's move on to the next one. So this is from Stephen White. So Stephen's obviously featured on the podcast.
He's also proofread half of my book for me as well.
Oh, do you know Stephen? Do you?
Well, only through communication, and it was probably a bit before the podcast, or certainly, you know, that was heightened it a bit more. But yeah, he's meticulously read through what I would regard as the most boring of the sections of my book, simply because it's lots of caught this, caught that, did this, caught that. Whereas I think I would say that the first section, the old days, we definitely used to get up to a lot more scrapes, you know, and there's I think there's quite a lot of humour in it, you know, about digging up the golf course the day before Bruce Forsyth's Pro Celebrity Challenge and stuff like that. But so that's all in there. The book bit is reasonably technical, you know, to some people's perception of extremely technical. Then you've got a section of like just sort of my travels around the world, which I don't know, I found that the least enthralling to write of it. And then the last section was all of last year. It was the recent stuff, which was a whole lot of fun, you know, and quite fresh in my mind. But yeah, I printed it off and he trawled through that, and he did it in probably a week or 2 weeks for me.
He's the perfect guy for that kind of thing. Yeah, he's a very meticulous guy.
And Wayne Pennell and his wife Marie as well did the other half as well, if they're listening. So thank you very much for that. And cool. I'm sure they found lots of mistakes.
That's it. Cool. Right. So Stephen says, now this is one that's going to get the brain matter working. Do you think that different carboxylic acids stimulate the same receptor? last time you mentioned giving a match angler your acid mix and the chap having to lower the levels used. Presumably the pegs were close together and possibly smaller carp. Have you experienced different responses in older carp, etc.?
Yeah, it's actually that's quite it's quite an easy one for me because I did an extensive amount of research and looking into this at the time. I mean, but again, it's something that the plumsing was based on that, and that was that bait is now sort of almost 15 years old. So it's stuff I looked into a long time ago. But all the organic acids all work. You want to go at lower levels of inclusion, and they all work completely differently. So what you want to look for is like a synergy of. So when I'm making a bait, I always say to people, don't overwork it. You know what I mean? Don't put things in that will clash with things. Only put something in if it's specifically there for function. Now, acids are completely the opposite end of that spectrum. You want to have a good amount in, maybe 12 or 15 different ones, all at minute levels, and make like your powder or your inclusion 10 to 20 grams of about 12 different ones. And the more you can put in, the better synergy and the better reaction you get to it. Definitely, 100%.
Sorry, quick question to expand on that. I'm really intrigued on your recipe for monster crab now. How many carboxylic acids, well, if any, has that recipe got in it, Jason? Do you know off the top of your head?
No,
No,
not really. I've got maybe 200 different flavor recipes on various hard drives.
Yeah, fair enough, mate.
One's like Tutti Frutti might have 80 different flavor compounds in one recipe.
Yeah.
But I was sort of doing this analogy at the start where we came in. It's like if you can imagine 100 people coming into the tackle shop and going up to the flavors, right? Out of that 100 people, how many do you think would sniff them? 100 people. Right? How many? But they're flavors. How many people would actually taste them? Well, probably about 2 or 3. But to be honest, if you've ever tasted flavors, you probably wouldn't. I remember someone coming up to me at the show, at a fishing show, I can't remember what, and saying, "Can you this monster crab? Can you make this, or do you know someone who does one similar?" Right. So I tasted it, and it had something like priaponic acid in it, because the moment it hit my tongue, it just started dissolving it. There was none of the burger stands or the tea stands were open, and all there was a bottle of Glug on the table. So, and I think it was like a B vitamin Glug or something, and I literally had to just pick that around and swill it around in my mouth until it stopped burning. That was from like one dab on my tongue. So you have to be careful about tasting stuff like that, but also be mindful that if it's going in your bait, then that's what your bait's going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why an explanation of you might pick 5 pineapple flavors. You pick 1 or 2 out as being really, really nice. They smell like fresh cut pineapple or something. And this is certainly my experience. And they work their shit, right? They might catch a fish, but they might catch a fish because it's seen the bait, or it's just picked it up, or there's competition. They're not good flavors. One that smells not like pineapple, it might just have loads of acetates in it or something. And everything, it smells more like pear drop. That's one of the old classics. That might be the one, you know what I mean? Because there's something in that, the taste of that, not the smell of it, right? Because you've already said there's 2 or 3 that you think smell a lot nicer. So it's going to be down to taste. Again, that tastes better to that fish. There's something in it likes about that.
Cool. Good answer. Sorry, Pete. I'm taking you off course, mate.
No, not at all. Not at all. Okay, so we're going to go down to, so this is from Sam Crawley. What the hell is the old secret agent, and why can't it be reproduced, as it is far superior to any of the new or knockoff versions?
So the reason sort of anything can't be reproduced is sort of DEFRA or industry guidelines. So one lad the other day, following the Ultra Spice thing, he sent me the two compounds that stringers won't use anymore to put in there. One was a eugenol. I can't remember offhand, but that'll be the reason they change. I mean, so the main thing on Secret Agent was fenugreek, which is generally an awesome attractor in any of its formats. But I mean, there's one or two about. Again, my favourite one, it was a pet food one. I can't get that anymore. But that's not because they stopped making it. It's just because that company went out of business. You know, various things like that. I mean, when you're bait making, I found some great things over the years that were waste products. One was cocoa husk, right? It cost absolutely fuck all. You could put loads of it in the bait, and the fish loved it, right? But it would come 1 week, it would come in 100 mesh, and the next week it would come in 20 mesh. It'd be like sawdust, really, crinkly and gnarly. And it didn't matter. I mean, it worked really well, however you used it. But people don't want to see that in their bait. So you can't use any waste products because it will always look different. So I mean, this year I do a bait. I've had trouble getting my bird food because of the Brexit, and I've been mucking around with different bird foods. And I do like a bait called Wasp Hybrid. The wasp has an artificial bee pollen, which is from a DEFRA experiment, and the hybrid version comes from it as like the additive from the great white, but it's like an emulsified version of that, and it's quite active. Now, this particular bird food I'm using at the moment is more of a biscuit meal. It's soaking it up, and it's making it really clammy and quite unstable. It's actually catching much better. It's almost like it's a live bait, but I know that if people have it hanging around for too long, they're going to be on the phone saying, "Oh, my bait's a bit sticky and clammy and mouldy and all of that sort of stuff." So it's something I've got to address. Obviously, not a problem if it's a fresh bait. And personally, when I use it myself and I'm on the bank, I stick it in the sun and make it sweat up. Was that anything to do with a question? I can't remember what the question was.
Do you know what? I've scrolled down to the next one. It was about Secret Agent, mate. So no, you've gone off on a little tangent, but that's all good. People love listening to it.
Yeah, fenugreeks. I mean, unfortunately you do have to shop around. The one I used to like, it was called Stringers used to do it, and it was called Spouton Animal Feeds or something. And it was really, really nice, But yeah, Secret Agent, again, it was one of those, wasn't it, where you could smell it a mile off, and you could smell it on your tackle like a month later and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. Stinky, horrible thing, really. So the next one, moving on, we've got Aaron Phillips. He's asked, what is the maximum level of essential oil you would use in a hook bait? Also, if using more than one oil, would you lower the levels to compensate each oil?
Right. So yeah, again, good question. I think all EOs, you have to find the level, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Definitely.
So have you? I don't know if you've heard the old one about Albus oil. Have you ever tried it, used it, or talked about it?
Yeah.
So I mean, I had one really good winter on that, and that was one drop. Crazy. One drop, and automatically when something works, I mean, it's like this additive I've got now. I mean, I haven't totally come to terms with it completely. You would think it's prohibitive in cost, right? I told you it's like about £400 or £600 per litre. So you would think that if you glugged it in the neat additive, that it would be immensely effective, but it isn't. You know what I mean? It really isn't. It overdoes it. It has its level. So there's nothing wrong with making blends of oils. I mean, I think we talked before, some of them go really, really well together. I mean, basil and black pepper oil, that used to sell, Nash used to sell that as Sting. I mean, that was fantastic attractor. Those two together. and a lot of the flavors as well will have essential oils in, especially the spice ones. You know, they'll naturally have some of those in. Again, put your mix together, but you're making more work for yourself. You know what I mean? The more parts in the jigsaw, the longer it's going to take you to unravel it. Definitely.
The sting oil, that was Sean Harrison's concoction, wasn't it? We've had him on a couple of times.
Well, I'll tell you another one, right? So I've done this a few times, just as an experiment. So I've made up pop-ups with just pure flavour. Okay, so I've cut out the egg and any stabilizer or anything, and I've literally just made up egg replacer with pure flavour. Yeah, and they catch fish. Now, but again, remember it's one bait, and it's tantamount to an artificial bait. You know what I mean? You're never ever going to do anything like that in a feed bait. But again, I don't know. I do know of people that have put a lot of essential oil in hook baits and they swear by it. It's not something I find super attractive. I mean, I think I've told you that, you know, my idea of high attract hook baits is something that's they call them catch to hatch or whatever. You know, I will soak the cork dust in oil attractors or something. I use cork dust rather than air balls. They don't look particularly nice, and put more lipids into it and dry it and put more lipids in and put it around fats. You know, and I found that to be more attractive. You know, but the whole oil thing, you know, people poo-poo it out of hand. It's not water soluble, but again, you know, it's still in your bait, isn't it? You know, it's still in your bait after 12 hours. It's still in your bait after 24 hours. It hasn't leached out. And is the taste more important than people think? You know, I know the answer to that, and I've sort of trying to encourage people in this. But if you read the book, certainly like the oil and fats chapter, I mean, it all overlaps. I mean, there's 3 chapters there, I think, which is flavors, oils and fat, pH and acids, and basically those 3 chapters. Any one of the comments could go in any one of those 3 because they're all intertwined in the big picture of it.
Christine has messaged us. What are your thoughts about baits for pre and prior to spawning, and does his approach change? Well, do you change your approach essentially with bait?
I'm gonna say no, because as a fishery owner, slightly, I try and leave the lake empty of people through the time historically after spawning, even though the fish don't seem to spawn in my lake, and I use that as a time like the growing season to give them a lot of bait with vitamins in to get it into them for regeneration. So you could look at having a more vitamin inclusive bait after spawning, but I think generally speaking, if you put a lot of time and effort into looking at a vitamin inclusive bait, full stop, you're going to catch more fish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that goes without saying. I think fish will feed when they want to feed, right? So I remember you saying something about a 70-30 rule, and I think it was, you know, 70% of the fish come out most of the time and the other 30 don't. Well, if I give you the 70-30 rule as 70% of the fish will come out when the water's full of oxygen, or the fish are feeding up for spawning, or the end of August, early September, when they're feeding up, like to put condition on for winter, then that's the 70-30 rule again. You know what I mean? So I've noticed I've got a ticket for a lake in the UK this year, and I haven't been yet, but I've noticed this week that lots and lots of fish have started to be reported all of a sudden. So that tells me that they're now on the munch prior to spawning. You know, it's going to be a good time where you can go and catch a few fish, and then probably in 2 weeks' time that they'll be at it, if you like. How long it takes them to get back on the feed afterwards really varies per lake. I mean, I've been on lakes where you might as well have gone home, you know. you know. And I'm talking about lakes where you've gone to France and you paid for your week and you think, oh God, you know what I mean? Like, what am I going to do? And, you know, you pull the lines out when they're actually at it, but then you think, you know, do I fish now or not? Or do I go somewhere else? So no, I don't think the bait makes any difference. You know, I think they'll eat more of it when they want to eat more of it. You know, they know that they have to build up a reserve to put energy in that they're going to lose. Yeah, and obviously feeding uses energy, but more importantly, it uses dissolved oxygen. I mean, I don't know how many people understand that or realize the importance of it. You know, God, it's really low pressure and it's raining today and it's windy and stuff. You know, it's dissolved oxygen in the water. The fish need that to feed. When it's been hot and still for ages and ages and they just switch off, you know, the water temperature's too high. It's like a summer torpor, if you like, but the dissolved oxygen level, that's why they're not feeding, you know. And then if you're going to catch any fish, you're going to like mug a couple off the top or some shady corner, like in like out of the way or under a tree or something like that. But certainly when conditions are right, I mean, like it was when I was away last time, you know what I mean? If I had had twice as much bait, I could have used twice as much bait easily because they were up for eating it.
You listened to Stephen White's podcast, didn't you? What do you make of his theories of using like high oil baits and his nut mixes when there's a sort of like very low dissolved oxygen in the water?
So I've got some theories about oils and fats. You know, again, a lot of it's in the book. I don't think necessarily having it again, it comes back to the same thing: olfaction against gustation. You know, the lipids in the bait is a nutritional thing as much as protein ever was or ever is. I think. You know, I don't think having it sort of pulsing up through the water in the fishery is necessarily great. Although having said that, when I've done this for years and years and years, whenever I'm boiling or cooking up particles, I get a packet of Brazil nuts up, I chop them up and I boil them up and I throw them in, and the oil that leaks off is just crazy. But then generally speaking, like that's for a method mix or ground bait, and I bind that up with some hemp or something. And you know, when you're sitting in the swim and all of a sudden you get a massive flat spot, and you know they're rooting there. You know, it's perhaps more of an indicator than an attractor. I mean, obviously the fish can detect suspended particles in the oil, but not necessarily the oil itself. But I think to get the function out of the lipids, you've got to be eating it in the bait. Mm-hmm. And again, it goes into all these chapters that I do, they all overlay each other. You know, so there's definitely a thing about high calories. You know, I mean, you put direct energy in, which comes from the lipids. Carbohydrates, I think, are very, very unimportant in fishing. You know, to the extent where you probably don't even need them at all. You know, I'm not sure people need them. You know, you can get more energy from good fats than you can ever from carbohydrates. I think is an excuse to put more poorer items into a bait, personally. And what was it to do with the oil around the second part of the question?
But no, what I was asking was about what Stephen White, he sort of like was hypothesizing that especially during the height of summer when the temperatures are high and dissolved oxygen's low, he favored a bait, well, his nut bait at the time, where he was using sort of like high oil content, a lot of peanut meal and.
Well, on the basis of it, I mean, it's if you look at sort of, you know, the last sort of sentence, if a fish can eat a meal and get lots of energy quickly and easily, without the effort, and that fish is lethargic, you know, and less inclined to feed, then that's good. You know what I mean? If so, you know, there's a 30-stone person sitting on here with a remote control. They probably can't be asked to walk to the fridge, but if there's a pizza fucking sitting there, they're going to eat all of it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a thing, there's a bit in the book. I'm sure I mention it. I had this conversation about something called plumpy nut. Have you heard of that?
You spoke about that on our last episode,
right? Yeah. So it's emergency first respond food. So It's basically crushed peanuts and oil, right, and sugar. That's basically what it is. And that's what they put into people to bring them back to life. So if you can imagine that fish is just sort of dosting around like in a torpor or something, you know what I mean? And then you give it a hit of energy, right, which it doesn't have to work hard for, then that's a perfectly valid theory, right? Straight away there. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it's 100% right, but the theory adds up. It's logical thinking, but that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought about tiger nuts for years and years, right? And why they work. And you come for all these things about, obviously they're carp selective. They can sit there for weeks until a carp eats them. You know what I mean? There's the crunch factor. I don't really buy into that too much. You know what I mean? Like, especially as I'm getting older, my teeth are getting less good and I don't want to be crunching stuff. I mean, every time I bite something hard, you know, I'm checking the collateral damage afterwards. But so I'm not necessarily buying that. But the one thing that does come back is that they're high in calories, high in energy. You know, they have natural oils. You know, they're giving the fish something. They are getting something. You know, the argument used to be there's nothing in there. The damage comes when everyone uses them to the extent of everything else. You know, and then fish obviously have a restricted diet. I mean, so in the 80s, I mean, there was a massive particle boom. People stopped using milk protein boilies and stuff, started using peanuts, lots of fish died. And Jeff was partly responsible for kicking the boilie thing again off with the fish meals at the time. I don't think he gets the credit for that. But now we've got more information, and the bait makers certainly should be asking more questions than a lot of them are, I think.
Yeah, but you mentioned fish meal there. I think that'll bring us nicely into the next question. So it's from Craig McPherson. If you can never use fish meal in a boilie again, what would you use and why?
Okay, so I sat behind my bed, which is completely unsavoury, really. I've got 100 kilos of 24mm milk protein boilies. And they are milk protein boilies. We're not just talking about putting a bit of token milk in. Mm-hmm. We're talking about using the least amount of anything else to hold it together as humanly possible. Now, there's zero attractors in those other than 2 mils of the great white attractor. So that's an experiment, you know, to give them something completely different, that tastes completely different with a low level attractor in. Obviously, that's restrictive in cost, but like as an angler, if you buy 1 kilo of it and it catches you 10 fish, and you buy 20 kilos of something else and that catches you 10 fish, then there you go. You know what I mean? You just use less bait. Simple as that. It depends on your angling scenario. It wouldn't kill me. It wouldn't kill me to not use fish meals again. Having said that, all my fish on my last trip were all on variations of fish meal baits. I think the nut thing has been done to death, really. You know, I keep trying to work a new element or angle into the nut bait and bringing it out, but people, even however well they catch, people just seem to be done with it. You know, they're nice smelling things and they work, but I think that's kind of had its time. Swings and roundabouts, mate. You can compensate for everything. So fish meal gives you a good level of crude protein. Do you need the protein? It also gives you minerals and things. You can supplement all of those. There's better things that you can use anyway. Yeah, I could live without it. I think as a bait maker, it would be tricky.
Yeah, it could get expensive as well if milks are your go-to.
Well, it is. I mean, I see everyone harps on about how expensive fish meals are, and you know they've gone up 400% and stuff, but they're still cheap enough for us to use, right? You know, they're still cheap enough to make that end product with. You know, they roll pretty well. Dietary requirements, they're pretty good. But you know, I quite like to use a bland base mix with no taste or smell or anything, and then you've got a pure building block for experimenting with, right? So what the bait, if you can make like just a sort of like bread, bird food, whatever, just something really basic, is so good for testing. And then you just put one different thing for it at a time, and then until you get your reaction in fishing terms. It's just so good for testing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Right, the next one has been asked twice, and I think I'm missing something here because I'm not sure what's going on. But two people have asked. One being Aaron McCracken, who, by the way, we'll give Aaron a little shout out because he's just sent a photo whilst we've been recording. Have you seen that, Sam? Of a 30-pounder that he's caught on our hook baits, which is pretty cool. Did you see that, buddy?
I saw one catch report come in. I don't know if it was the same guy or not.
And it's nice to get feedback. I mean, I personally, right, you know, I still get a buzz out of seeing people catch fish on baits I've made. Really, like, I'm not going to say as much as myself, but along those lines, you know what I mean? It's nice to have it.
This is new territory, isn't it, for me and you, mate? And we're sort of it's been quite nice getting some nice feedback, because there's that element of, obviously we've never sold bait to the public before, and it's quite nice to see the catch reports coming in.
Gives you a little boost, doesn't it? Gives you a little buzz, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely. So it was Aaron and Spencer Payne as well, and they're asking you what you think Kev Hewitt is using in his bait.
What the fuck? Huh. Two people have asked.
Yeah.
What's the reference? Oh,
I don't know.
Have you been fishing with him, Jason, or something?
No.
What's that about?
He must have caught something impressive or something at the minute, mustn't he?
I don't know, mate. No, that's gone right over my head. Sorry. Yeah.
Random.
Looks fishy. No, that must be a private joke. Yeah.
I have no idea.
I've no idea what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, so I've sort of venturing into sort of public waters and stuff, but most of my fishing is done with my mates, or it's done in remote places, you know what I mean, like real sort of trailblazing stuff. And I don't see other carp baits, you know, other than walking around a tackle shop looking at them through the window in the plastic bag. I mean, the last contact I had with anyone else's bait was working with Nash, and that was, what, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now, or something like that. Yeah. Honestly, I don't, you know, if you people say to me, I've been using, I don't know, DNA or Secret 7 or something, like, can you your bait anything like that? I was like, I don't know, mate. Never seen it. I've got no idea, you know.
I don't even know who Kev Hewitt's associated with, for most.
I don't even want to see other people's bait. I think as soon as you do, it clouds your own judgment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you have to do everything for yourself or work everything else for yourself, you know, the landscape is going to be that much richer at the end of it.
Talking of Kev's, I've got one. Sorry, I'm just moving this on now, Pete. Kevin Wallace, he says, do you believe in trying to balance amino acids in your baits?
No.
I knew that would be the case. I knew you'd say that.
Zero interest in that. Zero. Yeah. Not even on the scale. I fucked around with amino acids for years, written them off for years, fucked around with them for years.
Too many variables.
Unbelievable amount of variables, right? Yeah. So, you know, I was involved with the cultured baits and stuff, putting in aminos and vitamins into that and making my own cultured baits. And you can have great action on them, great results on them, incredibly effective. But I also believe that was partly due to the vitamins, if not more so. Yeah, I mean, you boil it, it's dead. It's got to be put in a soluble state. Put any soluble product into water and it disappears. No interest at all. I've never worked it out. I've never worked out an occasion. I've never worked out any protein contents, free aminos, any of it. Honestly, I think that is where bait has completely headed the wrong way for years and years and years.
More important than that, what's your favourite cheese?
Mate, I love cheese. I love cheese. apart, you can keep your goat's cheese, but just about anything else.
Oh, I love goat's cheese. A little bit of
Yeah.
Roquefort. Yeah.
Oh,
Fuck yeah.
brie, camembert, strong cheddar, man. Bring it on. All of it. Yeah, love
Good
it.
man. Good man.
Migraine central. Bring it on.
on biscuits or on like a French baguette? What are you going for?
Fresh bread. Yeah, if it's still warm.
Fresh bread.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Literally, if someone said to you like you're going to be executed, what's your last meal? I'd probably be going along the lines of something like I don't know, vindaloo and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. But then you think, if I had some really nice cheese on some hot bread, salty butter, that's going to beat everything, isn't it?
Got to have salty butter on that. What about a bit of chutney? Yes or no?
No.
No chutney.
No.
Keep it simple, eh?
Yeah, mate. Taste the flavors.
Sorry, Pete. Carry on, mate.
Oh, mate, I'm lost it all.
They do these cherry Jaffa cakes in France. They're like white with a red line through them.
Right.
They're like baked tart flavored Jaffa cakes. They're good. Yeah. They're really good.
What about dogs? What's your favourite dog?
Greyhounds all day long.
Greyhounds.
Yeah. I've had loads. Many greyhounds.
That was from Lux Fishy. That's his name, Lux Fishy.
Yeah, so I used to race them at one point, and I was also manager of one of the stadiums for a while, and that was quite a while ago. And since then, I've just had retired ones on the sofa, pretty much down to my last one now, which my wife has custody of. But I went and took him for a nice walk yesterday, and greyhounds, lovely dogs.
Great, easygoing characters, aren't they, greyhounds?
Mate, yeah. So the one I've got now, like we sort of adopted this wild cat, this feral cat that the neighbours had. Well, he decided he didn't want to live with the neighbours because they were numbnuts. But he made friends with a dog, and he was scared of everyone else, the cat, but he used to walk underneath the dog, and we'd go for a 2-mile walk with the greyhound and the cat, and everyone would just be looking at us going, "Wow, that's pretty mad." But they were best mates, and then he just comes home and goes to bed for 20 hours. He's lot.
Everyone loves a bit of pussy, mate. You mentioned Vindaloos as maybe if you're on death row. We've got another question from Phil Martin. If you could only have one curry for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Yeah, it's going to be Vindaloo. So I tend to have the little prawns in it, mainly because you get more sauce. Yeah.
Top tip there.
Yeah. Yeah. Although my local curry house now, it lets you buy just the sauce, for £3. So my fridge is just full of Vindaloo and Madras and Jalfrezi sauces, and virtually nothing else.
There's a curry house in Newquay in Cornwall called Indian Summer, and they do. What was that curry I put you onto, Pete, years ago? I haven't lived in Cornwall for like 8 years. I bet they still do it. Was it Southern Indian?
It was Southern Indian, mate. It was
amazing,
wasn't
it?
Sort of special.
Oh, fuck. Very spicy. It was kind of Vindaloo level, wasn't it? But flavour, it was insane.
So the meal would be prawn Vindaloo, mushroom rice, and a garlic naan bread. That would
got to have garlic naan. Poppadom as well, or not?
Yeah, but not so bothered, No.
No.
Good, thick, chunky bit of bread. And a naan's always better in an eat-in, right? When it comes in that bag, it's
definitely. Yeah. For sure.
Lime pickle for me. I love the lime pickle with a.
I like the poppadom. I like scooping up the curry with the poppadom, but no, keep the pickles and shit.
There's virtually none of it I don't like. But if I have something milder, there's an element of disappointment if it's not challenged. So
yeah.
They used to have this thing at the football club, and it was if you could eat Britain-sized curry, you got the Guinness Book of Records certificate saying you had eaten it. And you would start off with a Vindaloo, and you'd have like 5 little dishes containing maybe 4 or 5 tablespoonfuls. And if you got through it, so I did that, and I had respiratory problems for 2 weeks afterwards. And there wasn't a single point in those 2 weeks when I didn't regret completing that challenge just for this bit of paper. It was painfully gained, mate.
Do you know what? As I've got older, as I've got older, I can't do a hot curry. It's funny you say that, mate. Like, it's probably a couple of years ago. Me and Vanessa, my wife, we went to the cinema in Newquay, and we went to Indian Summer, and I had a Southern Indian. And
Did you?
honestly, by the time I'd got into the fucking cinema, mate, my guts had just turned. I was in no fit state to be watching a film. Oh no, I can't do it.
I'm kind of the same. My mouth decides it's had enough. You know, it gets halfway through and it goes like, "That's enough, mate." You know what I mean? Like, just turn it in. But then it's the breakfast of champions the next day, isn't it, as well? So, you know, it's win-win takeaway curry.
Who would have thought the curry question would be the most in-depth answer?
Yeah, no, definitely. So that's one curry. What about one attractor? Gary Carpangler has asked, if you could only use one attractor that's not well known for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It's the one thing I can't tell you what it is.
Is this in onions?
No, it's not. No,
because I think I know the one you're on about, the onions.
I'd love to tell you what it is, but by next week I wouldn't be able to buy any myself. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And so let's rewind this back 12 months ago before I knew about it and put the question then. So so I think I'd probably have to break it down into two answers. One would be a liquid, and one would be a powder, I suppose, right?
Cool.
So that's quite a hard question, because you think of something like, you know, LO30 when it first come out. I mean, it was incredible, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, fashion bitch, but then it becomes standard mainstream.
Definitely.
You know, and so things like that have their age. So I suppose if I had one liquid, I probably would just have that original Ultra Spice, man, because like, especially bearing in mind after my results last week, because and there's no point in everyone messaging me afterwards, because after the last podcast I got rinsed on it. You know what I mean? I really got cleaned out, and to the extent where I wish I'd kept a bit more back myself than I did.
Sorry, mate.
No, that's all right. Share the wealth, you know. Powder wise, one powder. That is much harder, isn't it? I mean, we could hark back to citric acid, you know, that in the tank tests and things, you know, that was like the most receptive to them. But mate, yeah, it's a tough question, right? And I think I told you before, like, you know, I was involved with Nash for a while. I worked with Nash for a long while. I could use their products very cheaply, and I never ever made one single bait with squid. I had no interest in it because it wasn't something I had found, I had invented, or I was learning from. And I tend to be like that with bait ingredients. Once I know something is phenomenally good or works really well, I want to find something else. So to limit me to one thing would be torturous, really. And what do you call as an attractor? Because I've said, you know, I don't think I put anything into a base mix unless it's there for a reason. So everything in that base mix is attractive.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's synergy as well, isn't it? You know, some things work good on their own, but they work great with something else, you know?
Yeah, you would have trouble making a bait, you know, out of just one ingredient. I mean,
exactly.
You know, casein, we used to put 60% in, and, you know, fish meals we put 50% in and stuff like that. But yeah.
Fair enough. You, just to build on what you said there, I mean, they don't sell it anymore, so I think you can probably divulge the info, but obviously don't if you don't want to. You mentioned you never did anything to do with squid with Nash. The squid powder that Nash used to sell probably, I don't know how, fucking years ago, was it a type of cheese powder or was it something to do with squid?
No, it was squid, and it was expensive as well. Even buying it like in a metric ton, it wasn't a cheap ingredient.
Is it the squid adderite or something else?
Something completely different. That's more of like an over flavored type squid on
Yeah.
powder.
That's it.
Never really found that to be desperately
No.
good. To be
No.
no.
Ditto. It's
but
not
yeah.
available anymore anyway. But,
That's it for the Facebook questions, mate. How are you sort of holding with the Instagram ones? Have we got any?
we do have some. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if I ducked around the answer to some of those questions rather than giving like a direct answer, it's not because I don't know, and I've got no notes or anything. I just ad hoc all of this because I just like talking about fishing. But the answer is a lot more complex, and like I was saying in these debate chapters in the book, you know, there's topics which could be in 3 or 4 different chapters because it all overlaps. And it's all part of the bigger picture and the learning, if you like, you know.
No, I totally get it, mate. And it's absolutely, we are putting you on the spot by these questions, and we're prying little pricks, for want of a better phrase. Do you know what I mean? That's kind of our job. So no, I get it, mate. I totally get it. And the thing is, like, it's natural for people to want like a black or white answer, but it's pretty rare that the answer is black or white, you know?
I've never been a secretive person, right? And
No.
I when my carp fishing started, you know, it was the best part of 40 years now. People were secretive, right? People wouldn't tell you what they were doing, or they'd be hiding things. And I didn't care because, generally speaking, I would catch more than everyone else on whatever water I was on. So it just literally didn't bother me. And I've always been like, if you can help someone, help them. It's like a lot of my baits or whatever it's explained in there and my thinking. You might not agree with it, but it might put a thought in your head that makes you come up with your own solution, you know what I mean, or your own little theory that drops everything into place for you. So I don't think any bait article's bad if it provokes a bit of thought, you know what I mean? Yeah. I'm just saying, like, basic users buying ready-mades, you know, rather than asking the guy about which bait should use, got tell him, sort of have a look at them, test them out, see, you know what I mean, like sort of dismantle them a bit if you like, or it's look, it's the same questions you get over and over again, right?
Yeah, definitely. Well, we've certainly found that, haven't we, Pete? There's a real common theme. Every now and then you'll get something that's like real sort of left field, which is nice. But yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's the same kind of thing, just get regurgitated.
That's why I hate the whole sort of field tester, spotted angler. I mean, so, you know, I mean, how does Cell need testing? You know what I mean? It's how long's it been around? 15 years. But yeah, there's still like thousands of these Cell testers. Like they're just people that, you know, they'll put their face in a mugshot or whatever to get bait a bit cheaper, basically.
Yeah.
I haven't really got a problem with that, but just see it for what it is. You know what I mean? Like I've not got any field testers, but I like a bit of feedback. If people say, "Oh, Jay, this was a little bit too soft," or you know, whatever, or I found like it was tainting, or whatever, you know, just something helpful's good. But I've got enough ideas for my own lifetime already. You know what I mean? And as soon as you start looking into something, it takes you off on a tangent straight away. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, this whole EU Brexit thing has kind of put a spanner in the works because it's made it harder to get ingredients. It's, you know, the preserve has gone up like sort of 400% overnight, and you know, people who use like MPG and things like that, which also goes into the flavors into vaping. Well, that's partly a component of antifreeze. So as soon as it gets colder, you know, that's going to go up even more, isn't it? There's out of the 8 companies that made it, there's only 2 currently making it. IPA, perhaps with isopropyl alcohol, you wouldn't use it for a lot of things in kitchen. But again, as soon as COVID happened, they brought up the entire world stock to make the hand lotions and hand wipes.
Yeah.
The same happened with milk proteins as well, when all the sports products and Coca-Cola started making the whey boots and stuff.
It might just be, sorry, Jason, just rustling, I think there, mate. It's just rubbing on your microphone. It's coming.
Oh, sorry, mate. Loud. Yeah, supply and demand, and Brexit and stuff has made it a lot harder. So people are going to have to be more creative and try different sources. And
here's one for you. It's a one-word question. You ready?
Yeah.
Turmeric.
Turmeric.
Depends how you pronounce it.
All right.
I'm pronouncing how he's written it. Yeah,
right.
turmeric. I say turmeric, but I think you're supposed to say turmeric. I was trying to sound educated, but either way, turmeric. Well, I'm guessing he wants to know what your thoughts are on turmeric, and probably the compound curcumin, which is the active part of it, or at least the active part of what people supplement it for, inflammation, etc.
So it is touted as being one of nature's wonders, isn't it, for the human?
Yeah.
I think the more diverse and more natural your diet is, probably the better. So one of the early fish meals, like one of the Nash baits, we talked about it earlier, the sting with the black pepper and the basil oil. So that was made up of non-heat carrying spices. So turmeric, that was one of the ingredients of that. Fenugreek. It was a mix of all of those non-heat carrying spices. That was a phenomenal bait. That was a really simple but really good bait. And it had a whole bunch of those spices in. So again, if you're looking to target sort of wily old fish with those advanced taste receptors, then perhaps just using natural attractors like that, in powder in your base mix, even a drop of oil or something. It's an avenue. Yeah. It's not one that excites me particularly, but it's again, you can't fault people for the logic on it.
Yeah. Something that I'm interested in is so curcumin is like the active part of turmeric, or turmeric, however the fuck you want to call it. That stuff's interesting. There's a type of curcumin called Mariva curcumin, which is a type of phytosomal curcumin, and it'll pass the blood-brain barrier. It was a different episode. I can't remember which episode it was, but we were talking about, I think it was me that was talking about it, actually, about carp maybe tuning in and latching onto things that helps their body repair, particularly like really old carp. And I don't know, just sort of pure guesswork, for want of a better phrase, but I'd like to put that into a bait, and those kind of things that help, DNA repair, etc. It passes the blood-brain barrier as well, which is obviously very unique. And just to see if that has any effect, whether carp latch onto it. They might not at all. It's complete sort of theory at this stage.
Have you ever looked at bioflavonoids?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is
lots.
That's probably a better avenue for what you're talking about and trying. And you can buy sort of ready prepared products in animal feeds with bioflavonoids that they're exceptionally good attractors as well as health beneficial. Yeah, they don't smell particularly nice though.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I get it, but they can actually be hormetic for the carp, can't they?
There's a few blinds around. So like, was it John or Bill? I should know because I only listened to it last week. But they were talking about piperine from black pepper, and you're thinking, well, black pepper oil is good, so why is it good? And then you break it down and you look at like the active part or the concentrated part, and then you think, right, I'm just going to use that part of it, and that should be like so much better. But yeah, it actually isn't. So this is the lovely thing about bait, you know what I mean? For every winner you find, you've got to kiss 10 frogs as well. You know, you get these sort of illumination bits in your mind. You think, fucking hell, what about that? You know what I mean? And you get really excited about it, and it just doesn't materialize, or you get one of those really good results followed by like a really average result, you know.
Yeah.
But maybe I pick things up and drop them too quickly, you know, because I low concentration span.
Yeah, I know what you. I mean, I was talking about Q13, which is a bioflavonoid, which is the more sort of commonly known ones. And yeah, it's just theory, isn't it? I mean, well, it's my theory at the minute, but the thing is, it's like you get to a stage where, I don't know, maybe you want different avenues to explore down, and you might have done amino acids and freaking carboxylic acids to death. And then you get another theory, and it's like, fuck, let's experiment with that for a while. You know, that's definitely where I'm at.
There's a
with this kind of thing.
Bioflavonoid premix. And do you know what? I would actually tell you what it's called, but I can't actually think of that. I'm sure it's in the book. Now, that is one of the only things I've ever come across in my life that is a really good carp catcher, but doesn't catch bream. Yeah. I did a bait for 3 years, and I think on my sort of Facebook page, a bait Facebook page, there's probably like 1,300 people on it maybe. And it was like, I would say every week, anyone ever had a bream on this bait, and it would just be like silence. I remember we went out to this lake in France. I was trying to buy it at the time. It had been run commercially. It had been closed down because it was too near the gravel workings, and some of the fish were getting pinched and stuff like that. And it hadn't been fished for sort of 5 years, but I was going to invest in it. And I was using this bait on all rods. Anyway, we hadn't really seen anything, nothing really happening all week. So I put a different bait on every rod, and all of a sudden I had like 3 bream. And then we sat there, and like we said, why don't we have a bream match? So we sort of scaled it down. We whittled our baits down, and we had wafters, 1 rod each, north against south. And we had about 450 pound of bream in the afternoon. It was full of them. And they were starving. You know, they probably should have been about 8 or 9 pound, and they were about 5 pounders. You know, they're absolutely ravenously starving. Put all 3 rods back on this bait, Banoffee XL, I used to call it, and nothing, just no bream at all. It was crazy, you know. And I used to tell people that, but I don't think anyone but actually believed me.
It's interesting, mate.
Yeah. And it could only have been that was the only like radical, because the attractor was banana oil and milky toffee. The only radical thing in the bait was that bioflavonoid powder. It was green, used to smell of vinegar. I'm sure I do name it in the book, and I will tell you now if I could think of it.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look, mate. Yeah, I do this sort of thing for a living, but with humans, obviously, which is obviously very different from carp, but yeah, interesting nonetheless.
Well, humans can tell you, or should have the ability to tell you, what they want or what the problem is. I'm not saying they all do at all, but I mean, carp completely 100%. You have to interpret it, you know, and you might get 2 really successful people, and they will have 2 different interpretations of it.
The thing is, with humans, right? So let's say if I had a target carp and I liken them to one of my clients. Well, with my clients, I can get them blood tested for anything that I want them blood tested for. I can get them genetically tested, which we do a lot of, and we can actually see, you know, what their genes would predispose them to. We can also look at epigenetics, turning on and off genes, and go into much more detail. Whereas you're trying to target a certain carp in a water, and it's just, you just don't have that luxury, do you? There's so much more kind of mystique to it. And it's science-based, but you don't know all of the science on it. You can't get the whole handle of the science on it. So it's that kind of mystical aspect of it. Well, and I suppose that's why we love it.
Yeah, and when you have, like, you know, those fish that don't come out for ages, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, like my lake's 5 acres, and yet fish can, and you know, I'll have 26 weeks of anglers on there a year. Well, I did have before COVID, and yet you know, fish that can go for the entire season without getting caught. You know, they literally 50 times a week they must have been over the top of someone's bait.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, rejected it.
Then is it a mouth shape thing? Is it how they suck it in, or is it a receptor thing? Is it that do you know what I mean? It's just never ending, isn't it?
It is.
You're never going to know.
As much as you talk about having a great bait and great, the other variables are just as important. I think the way you fish it, perhaps not even so much. I've told you how crude some of my rigs are. They're just basic, like 2 knots each end. But like I said, you've got the dissolved oxygen, you've got the conditions, angling pressure. It's absolutely massive. You know what I mean? How well can they see the line? How well can they see the hooks? You know what I mean? A round ball. There'll be lakes where they feed shit food, or it's not worth the risk. There's that much food, right?
Yeah.
There's that little competition. They can literally be pick and choosy what they want. Angling competition massive. I mean, I fished this lake. Again, there's another chapter in here about it, and no one had ever fished it, and it's like 2 foot deep, and you can see the fish, but you can't see them because the water's dirty. Massive fish. You can't believe they're so big in that little water, but they're just so cagey, and you think 100% bait has to be the answer, but it isn't, because they just don't need to feed, because the water temperature's so high and there's so little dissolved oxygen. They're literally using no energy and don't need to replace it. They could just be sitting in front of your hook like for 8 hours and not move.
Yeah, definitely. Right, on to the next Instagram question. Some of these I'm just going to skip over. No offense to anyone that's asked them. So Luke Bold Carper has asked, when choosing a hook bait, do you go on color or scent?
So I think color's a personal preference with anyone. I think you're automatically going to choose the color you like. So most of the time, the color's going to be just whatever color my bait is. I do like to use a wafter, which will be either the color of my bait or one shade lighter to try and make it look a bit washed out, or because I put in a bit of blood plasma or whey gel to make it a bit harder so it can fish for longer. What was the second part? Is color or scent?
Yeah, basically. Yeah, I mean, just to expand on the color, I know what you mean. People pick their favorite, don't they? They caught their PB on something on white, so they keep But do you look at contrast in lake beds? This is what I do more so than colors. So for fishing over sandy gravel, like a bright yellow, actually that might be really fucking subtle over some bright gravel. Or in a black bait, which most people might think, or brown bait, most people think that's dull. Over sandy gravel, that's actually pretty fucking poignant. Do you look at that side of things or not?
Do you know what? I totally get it. I'm going to say no. I'm just I'm going to be 100% confident in my bait. Mostly it's sessions, like a week session, and I'm not going to be action hungry at the start. At the start of the session, I want to get as many fish eating it as possible. So I'm in this 3-week session I'm going to do in July. Again, it's testing myself. And rather than having like a baited area, maybe like the size of your living room, I'm probably going to have the baited area the size of maybe 6 tennis courts to start with. Literally just throw it everywhere and get them eating it. I don't try and make the hook bait stronger at all. If anything, over the last 2 years, I've gone the other way, and I try and make it more subtle, because I do believe that those bigger, older, wiser fish are probably that's the way I'm gonna trip them up more so.
Sorry to interrupt you, mate. John Baker was saying that the older carp have an increase in receptor sites.
I believe that. 100% I believe that. And that's the way. I said, like, I've been trying to catch these 2 or 3 particular fish in my life. And that's the way I've been going about and doing it, and it's worked. Again, it might have worked because of a lack of angling pressure, because there's lots of dissolved oxygen in the water, and the only food they had was mine. But I do believe that was partly the reason. But it's not cut and dried, right? So 10 years ago, I went to Lake Bled 2 or 3 times in Slovenia. You're fishing sort of 10, 13 meters, 30 to 40 foot deep. Most of the lake is 90 foot deep. Deepest I had one was 55. But I found you couldn't get a bite at the time. Obviously it's changed now. So more angling pressure now, more boilies. At the time, it was hard to get a take unless you threw loads of maize in. Now, whether that was because they could see it, because it was crystal clear, slate on the bottom. You know, you used to wind in from 40 fishing 40 foot deep, and your leg would be warm. Yeah, that's how much light was penetrating down there.
Yeah.
So if you didn't put that corn in, you didn't get a bite. You'd be fishing boilies, but you'd had to put the corn in, or you got no action. And I don't know whether it was because they could see them. So I tried it another way. I tried putting in oily halibut pellets to bring the oil up, to bring the fish down, and that didn't work. They needed that visual attraction on the bottom for you to get any action. So again, that I learned that the hard way. I mean, this guy literally gave us 3 buckets of maize, 1 each, and I went, lads, you can have my maize because I want to catch bigger fish. And then I watched them for about 4 or 5 days catching fish while I didn't. I went, that weren't a good decision then, was it? You know? So colour, you know, again, was going to ask the fish about this, weren't they? What they could see. I mean, I do believe they could see in shades. And I've had one of my best baits I ever did was a blacky green bait. Wasn't popular with people, but it worked really well for me. It was
what was that called?
That was prosing. Yeah, so it was.
I had a black bait off you fucking years ago, long time ago. Probably when you, well, I say a long time ago, fairly long ago, 15 years. Probably when you first started. What would that have been it?
No, that was probably MB2. So it was that quite a spicy bait.
Yeah. Can't remember, mate. Can't remember.
Spicy, yeah, probably. It was probably that one.
Right.
That was a fantastic flavour. That was one that I copied for these Dutch guys, and someone told me that they were just going to rob you, which turned out to be true. So it sat in my shed for about 10 years, and then one day I just thought, oh Christ, I'm sick of it looking at me every day, so I'm going to do something with it. And it was phenomenal, right? You know, apple spice, but it had elements of meatiness and garlic and fruit. I think it was basically sort of 3 flavors someone had put together. That's why it was hard to replicate, right? It was it was ever so good. That would be one, going back to one of the questions earlier, that would be one liquid attractor that I'd be happy to use forevermore.
Yeah, interesting, mate. Interesting. We're bringing out a few flavors very, very soon. We're doing the same, blending things up and making them uncopyable, if that's the right word. So yeah, we got that from talking to John Baker a little bit, which was interesting. Next question is a boilie. Oh no, am I misreading that? No, but yeah, boilie only syndicate. How can I fish differently to the others?
Smash it all up. Yeah. Crumb it up. Stick it in 3 heavy ply sacks on your driveway. Run it over with a car. You know, different shape to a bait. Crack it all out. Pump loads and loads of it in, but just not the round balls. You know, it's just obvious, isn't it? Just loads and loads of round balls. So I mean, I'll give you an instance on my last trip. Yeah, I mean, so I've turned up and I said it's just crazy. It's just crazy. It was going off. So I mean, I was dropping the rig with a bait boat. I could have cast it, but I had the bait boat there, right? So I've got the method feeder on. I'm putting in five whole boilies, 5 chopped up boilies, and a fist of large particle, like pulses, beans, peas, that sort of stuff, right? And that's what I was having all the 50s on. Bang, 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 bang. That presentation, right?
Yeah.
So then we went down the garden centre. I got 25 kilo of wheat, 25 kilo of maize concasse, like cracked maize, because I was aware that I had another sort of 12 days fishing. I thought I'd give that a good old soak up and mix it all up. And then I put it out there. And I thought, oh fucking hell! Right, straight away, it's just obvious, right? So it was stockies, tench, the odd bream, the carp size gone straight down. Rather than just sticking to the formula, I obviously those big fish, they were still in the swim, they were still seeing the hook bait, but they was just looking at this patch and thinking, that's someone fishing for me, mate. You know what I mean? Really, you know, there's a hook in there waiting to snag, and they knew they're big fish, you know. So even having the best bait in the whole world, you've still got to put it where they are, obviously. Which, if conditions are fantastic and 100% right, that's all you've got to do. But if they're not 100% right and conducive to catching all day long every day, which they're not most of the time, you've got to make that baiting situation work for you or a little bit different. So a boilie only syndicate, yeah, smash them all up, mate. Get loads and loads of crumb in there, get like an alternative shaped hook bait. Make them eat your bait, but just not looking like a round ball.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I do this. Do you look into what else, like what the rest of the syndicate is feeding? Give you an example. My one, everyone's feeding fish meal. The fish meal that's going in, it's not got like a mega high protein content. It's been tested independently. So I've gone in with like a high protein, milk protein bait. It's got very high concentration of milks in. Do you kind of hold any weight in that, just going against the grain with the type of boilie or not?
So I'm personally not fishing against anyone else, but I would back my bait 100%. And anyone else that came and said the same thing, like, Jay, all this is going in, and like, you know, everyone's using CC More Life system, and I've got to use this. Like, sod that, mate. Use what everyone else uses, and you catch what everyone else catches.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And if you're not as good an angler as them in the way you cast,
catch less.
You'll catch less, right? So don't inhibit yourself. Don't put shackles on yourself. Go in with a good quality bait, and then you're the market leader. That's the advice, mate. Just back yourself 100% all the time.
There we go. Hopefully that helps. That is the end of the Instagram questions that we're going to cover, I think. Pete, you still with us?
Still here.
Still alive? Yeah.
I managed to run to the toilet again. Snuck
that
out.
Baby bladder.
There's shades of being all right, though, isn't there?
Yeah.
If you're just about all right, but paying for it tomorrow, it's not so good.
Well, yeah, no. I'm pretty sober. I've had one beer, so I'm all right. It's you boys who'll probably have sore heads.
You been drinking much, Jason?
I'm not a big home drinker, but I when I knew I was doing this a few days ago, I put those Guinness in the fridge, and I've been looking at it a couple of times. And I'm thinking, I'm actually quite looking forward to drinking those. I mean, I was in that tent for like 10 days, and I was mulling over what my treat was going to be, what my first takeaway was going to be when I get back. But once you've been to the car like 20 times unloading it, and you've put everything away and had a bath, you just can't be asked to do anything really. It's just, mate, I felt absolutely, just dismantled after that. So I think a 3-week session in the summer, just on one lake, will probably be easier.
Yeah. Are you going to be fishing over here in the UK?
Yeah.
In the coming months.
I'm sitting looking at a syndicate ticket in front of me. Now, my plan really is to do a session for the whole of November, which is quite rad. So I've never done these long sessions before. So I want to sort of test myself a bit, and I've saved up a bit of money over the winter as well to give myself the opportunity to do it.
Have a word with Stephen White. He's a full-time boy.
Yeah,
you're right.
I mean, the thing that puts me off the
winding 'em up.
UK is just other anglers being around me.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, and it's something I've not had for a long, long time. But I mean, I had bits of it, you know, last week and on this public, and I was seeing them take their bait boats out sort of 300 meters into the lake, and I thought, well, I'm not really up for that so much. You know what I mean? So the my bit of the water, I've got a couple of bays either side of me, a few features. Whilst it's not a popular area of the lake, I'm sure with 3 weeks to play with and 100 kilos of like really good bait, I think.
I was going to ask you actually, mate. When you're in France, are you using a boat or even a bait boat, or not? You just casting it all out.
Yeah, both. It depends, you know. So I mean, if you've actually physically got a boat and you're in a boat and you're on the water, it will tell you so much more about anything.
Yeah.
Than being out there over the spots, looking, prodding, feeling. You know, that 100%. That's the way to go. Bait boats are a necessary evil that can give you a better presentation, let you use different things. Like say, I've been fiddling around with these method mixes, you know, and these method feeders, like for the first time ever, really, for the last sort of 18 months, which has been my 18 months most incredible carp fishing. And I do think in some way they're tied in together. And those things wouldn't be sort of cast in as well, or carrying the things that I'm putting out there.
Do you think that's like some different kind of presentation, or do you think it's just the fact you got that powder like leaching out? Why do you think that's been working so well?
Yeah, a bit of both. I put colours in there as well. So again, if you go back to sort of Lake Bled, right? It's the bottom is rock hard. It's granite slate, you know, from like the Ice Age. And I've watched the fish feeding, even in 20, 30 feet of water. It's so clear you can watch them feed. And like they've got their mouths pinned to the bottom, they're sucking and blowing, and there's nothing coming up, you know. And then you see like a little puff of silt come up, and they're all over it looking, you know what I mean, for like natural food in that silt. And there's no sort of swimming pools as such. So people do wild swimming, freshwater swimming. So there's 3 or 4 lakes of the area that they've chucked a load of sand and stuff in, and tourists swim in them. So on a hot day when you get lots of people in the water, it's stirring up the silt. You get loads of fish in amongst them as well, looking, you know. So I'm thinking, well, what about if I just go down to Tesco's and I make up my method mix with a little pot of brown colouring off the shelf that cost me 25p. As soon as that goes in the water, I've got a brown cloud. Well, I've got something a little bit better than that. It's the dye that they put in milk, yeah, to make it look extra white. So it's obviously completely safe for people, but it puts an incredible cloud in the water for a long time. So that's basically one of the main components of my method mix, you know. And whether that's simulating fish feeding or covering up the rig, a bit of both, I think.
Yeah, very interesting, mate. Very, very interesting. Kenny Gates, who I get bait off, he's mad into his ground bait, and that's something that I've been using since I've started using Kenny's bait. And yeah, it's interesting. It's something that isn't really used much now. You know, method mixes or ground bait. It's just it just seems to be all boilies or particles or pellets, doesn't it, these days?
Yeah, I mean, I've got loads of sacks here of basically cornflakes without the sugar. Yeah, just maize flakes.
Yeah.
Cheap as fuck, you know.
Cheap as chips, but really good.
You drop a bait boat of that out, and like it's just tinker time instantly. You know, if I wanted to be a tench angler, you know, I found a way I could be the best tench angler there ever was. You know, straight away. Or anyone listening to this, just get yourself a sack of cornflakes, mate. You know what I mean? Like, especially this time of year, they just absolutely muller it. They're all over it. Not necessarily the one for carp, but all my little edges and things, you know, I've got all these little pots and things, and I write them down and things, and that's just a good way of testing for me. you know, and I'm sure some of these ground baits and these things, these have been the edge. You know, they've been the difference between that photo album being full up and not.
Love it, mate. Pete, you got anything else anywhere you want to take Jason?
I don't think so, mate. No, we've been going for a little while, haven't we? I think that's then the perfect sort of spot to round it up. Is there anything you sort of wanted to finish on, Jason? Is there anything you wanted to sort of add to what we've discussed?
No, I think so. I mean, I was say it's always, you know, you have a chat. It gives you ideas as well and makes you think. I mean, I think that's the benefit of fishing with your friends, like holiday sessions and stuff. You know, I've got 2 or 3 friends who, you know, were quite inquiring minds, and you could bounce ideas off each other. I mean, certainly being on my own was a completely sort of different experience, really. And I found I fished harder to start with. Do you know what I mean? Like normally, so when I was at Badger, up my own lake, I mean, I was reeling in at night. I'm not fishing. You know what I mean? 8 o'clock at night, all my rods are in. You know, I've zipped the door down. I'm in my sleeping bag. I've gone to bed for 10 hours, mate, or, you know, 8 hours. I've literally got up, done 3 hours fishing, gone off and done 6 or 7 hours of collar, shoveling gravel or mowing and cutting back vegetation, and then done 3 hours. So, you know, to catch 7 fish, I mean, it was literally probably in a total of about 12 or 15 hours fishing. It was crazy, really. But then that's nice, you know, because, you know, when you're doing like long winters or whatever in you're own in that bivvy, and, you know, you've got no company or anything, it's go a bit crazy, I think. I think a lot of them have over the years.
Yeah, definitely. You were backtracking a little bit. You said you were looking at a syndicate. What part of the country is that in? Just out of interest.
Yeah, Cambridge.
Okay, fair enough, mate.
Yeah.
No, sir. I was just out of interest.
Oh, I caught my first ever 30-pound carp from there, and it was fucking yonks ago. And lo and behold, it's still alive, still in there. And I thought, you know, how many 30-pound carp have I had since then? Probably 1,000. Yeah, yeah, maybe more. But that one's still there. You know, it's all that time with all those captures and all those years, it's still swimming around.
Is it really?
Doing the same things. And I thought, there's a story, isn't there?
See, recaptures aren't cool in my book, but I reckon that would be a cool recapture.
Wouldn't it? Yeah.
Oh, mate. Yeah, that's different. That is. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should do that. Yeah.
So that's been rattling around in my head for a while. But I've said I've got more time. I've given myself 5 months. You know, so we'll see where we go from there. I've got friends who are, well, one guy I know at the moment. He actually, he had, believed it or not, he'd saved up a small fortune, really, probably more money than most people have in their lifetime. And he went and bought a bait company, and he bought a lake and went fishing for 12 months. And the upshot of he got bored of it. It was just too much in one go.
Right.
I don't think it'll happen to me. You know, I've been fishing all my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gives you that element of sanity. I mean, certainly, sort of the early chapters of this book, when I was fishing places like Clare Park in Suffolk, I mean, it was for BP employees. Right? It's the only way you could get in. So I got a job in a BP garage for 2 weeks until my ticket came. Right, and then that was it.
Yeah, out of there.
Yeah. And I knew I only had 1 year at it. But there weren't really hardcore carp anglers on there. So I used to turn up in the dark on a Friday night, leave on the dark on a Sunday night, not see another person. You know what I mean? And it was just repetitive. There was no real excitement or anything new or any variables or anything routine. And I've just been watching a thing today with Eric Cantona on, and it's just the same thing. You know, why did you retire at 27? It was because there was nothing new for me. There was no excitement. You know what I mean? I didn't want to just go through the same old motions of it. And quite honestly, rather than get involved that, I'd rather just go down a day ticket lake and have a bend in my rod all day, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. The only reason I asked, mate, was in case you were venturing up my way. I'd have had a bit of bait off you and sort of met up. That was why I was asking, really. But
you're down the west country, aren't you?
No. Well, Pete's down in Cornwall. No, I'm up in Cotswolds. So yeah, I fished Cotswold Water Park, and also I've just got a ticket over in Oxfordshire as well.
Well, my dad's up there. He's up in Banbury.
Oh yeah, he's east from me. Yeah.
I don't know whether I'm allowed back into Devon and Cornwall or I'm banned. Again, like, if you do read this book, then you'll read the stories of why I might be banned from Devon and Cornwall.
You have to get a copy of this book
because that's all in there. Yeah, fun and games.
I'll order a book off you, mate, when it's all done. Please sign it for me. But yeah, I'll definitely get one off you, mate.
Cheers, Steve. Yeah.
Cool. No worries. Awesome.
Right.
Well, Jason, it's always a pleasure, man. I think this podcast it's just been like a real chilled out chat between us all, and I've really enjoyed that. I think people will as well. So yeah, as always, thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate your time.
Nice
Cheers,
one,
boys.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jason. Take care of yourself, mate. Bye.